What's Gordy doing?
What's that?
Do you know where? Yeah. Shall we wait for Gordy?
He should be in pretty quick.
All right.
How are you? I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, it's a nice smile. It's almost like you
Why not?
you see a change of activities coming.
Someday, yes. Yes.
All right, let's go ahead. All right, we will convene on our council meeting, date Tuesday, June 28th, 2022. Is everybody's microphone on, please? We welcome everyone here. Thank you for being here. And we also welcome those who are watching us live on the youtube.com. All right, we will have an opening by Council Vice Chair Paul Borup.
So I've been on the council for 3.5 years, and it's getting kind of close to the end. I'm not going to get to do this too much longer. And so as I look around at my fellow council members, I got a poem that comes to my mind. No, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Now you know why I rubbed your head when I came by.
For good luck, good luck. And it goes, if with pleasure you are viewing any work, I'm going to add a man or woman is doing, if you like him or you love him, tell him now. Don't withhold your approbation till the person makes oration and he lies with snowy lilies on his brow. No matter how you shout it, he won't really care about it. He won't know how many teardrops you have shed. If you think some praise is due him, now's the time to slip it to him, for he cannot read his tombstone when he's dead. More than fame and more than money is the comment kind and sunny, and the hearty warm approval of a friend, because it gives to life a savor, and it makes you stronger, braver, and it gives you heart and spirit till the end. If he earns your praise, bestow it. If you like him, let him know it. Let the words of true encouragement be said. Don't wait till life is over and he's underneath the clover, for he cannot read his tombstone when he's dead. So I didn't want to wait till the end to let you all know how much I appreciate you, how much I've enjoyed working with you, how much I've learned throughout the years. It's been phenomenal to work with this council and some of the wonderful elected officials that are in the valley. John White's not here to hear it. Don't let him know I said nice things about him. But it was wonderful to have him on the council as well. So I just want to say thank you and let you know how much I appreciate you as a council and how much you've impacted my life. So thank you. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks in the form of a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're indeed grateful for the bounteous blessings that thou hast bestowed upon us. We're grateful to live in this wonderful country that was inspired, and the founding fathers that gave us this form of government and the freedoms that we enjoy. We're grateful for this valley and for the good people that are here. We're grateful for all that we have been given and for each other. We ask thee to please bless us, that we can have kindness, compassion, and gratitude, that we can make appropriate decisions that would allow for the sanctity of each individual to make choices that would be good for them, that we can sustain the freedoms that have given us so much prosperity. And we ask a special blessing on those that are struggling at this time, that they may be comforted. Please help us that we can do things that would increase and sustain our quality of life here. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And if you'd stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Borup. We appreciate those comments. Very nice. All right, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. all of us had a chance to review the minutes from June 14th of 2022.
Yes, there's a question or an issue on the part about where we went into executive session in the workshop. It's missing who made the motion, who seconded it, and what the vote was, which we are required to have.
Okay.
I do not know who that was.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody wrote it down or if anybody remembers who it was.
Ooh, good question. Good question, Gina. I don't know. Does anyone have any remembrance at all of that?
I'll say that I did, because I think I came back in here, and as soon as we got a quorum, I said, move to adjourn.
Did you move to go in?
Yeah, but what about going in?
Going in?
Yes.
That was Nolan. He's always ready to go.
That's true.
Based on that, I concur.
I'm sure I second it, because
Ready to go as well, right?
there we go. Whether that happened or not, isn't it in the tape?
Yeah, would it be on the
Do
tape?
we have a tape?
They don't
Do
get
we?
posted, but we do have a tape. You can request them.
Tape will make us both liars,
Where do
but
we-
that's okay.
Or do we have access to that tape?
Janine probably has it.
Okay,
It's on the website.
okay, so I will move that we postpone approving these until next time, and then we can fix that.
Let's look at the
Right.
tape, and then we'll know for sure.
Okay, so there's been a motion to postpone approving the minutes until we can look at the tape.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we wait to review or approve the minutes of June 14th, 2022 until we can review the tape to find out who made the motion to go into executive session, who seconded it, and what kind of approval we had on that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, Gina. All right, report from our executive, David Zook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one item this evening. Just wanted to share some gratitude that was expressed by the Paradise Fire Department. Chief Hammer and Councilmember Gunnell and I went out last week and delivered a new fire engine to them. They were very thankful, and a small token of their gratitude, they sent a baseball cap with their insignia on it for each of you, and wanted to extend their thanks to you. So thank you for your support. They thank you for their support.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Comment.
Yes.
I want Executive Zook to know that every time he sends that email of the things that he's been doing, I enjoy that.
Thank you.
I guess I've decided, Dave, you're far busier than I thought you were. You know,
Those are just the interesting parts.
it's quite good, you know. It's good to be
Yeah.
able to read that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gordy. All right, items of special interest. We have a report on our 2021 external audit from Joan Simpkins. And if you'll please come up, remind me of your first name again?
It's Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Just don't be-
We appreciate you being here.
you can-
So my name is Mike Kidman. I am an audit partner at Jones Simpkins, and I appreciate the opportunity to deliver the audit to you. The audit went very well. Lots of cooperation from lots of departments, and there's a lot that goes into an audit, as you know. I also would want to make mention that I feel like we have a very good audit committee. We meet with them at least a couple of times. There's lots of good dialogue. We've gone through these financial statements in a lot of detail, talked about, you know, things that we did and the process and those kind of things. And I feel like that is the right place to have, you know, the very detailed discussion. I will be glad to answer any of your questions about the financial statements or anything else that you've looked at. My intention is just to cover the opinions and not necessarily go into all of the financial information that we've reviewed, but I'm happy to entertain any questions. On page 3 is where the independent auditor's report starts. It is a newly structured opinion. The regulators keep trying to write it to explain what an audit is and what an audit is not. what our responsibilities are, what management's responsibilities are, because an audit is a big process and it's often misunderstood a little bit about how much has been looked at and how much hasn't been looked at and what procedures we use. But we have applied all of the required auditing procedures and followed the appropriate auditing standards and reviewed the financial information, which is prepared and given to us by the county. I feel like the county is very fortunate to have some very technically qualified people that can prepare and draft these financial statements. And in our review and application of our auditing procedures, we believe that these financial statements are properly prepared and presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they are materially correct.
Could you, I know we had a big discussion about this in the audit committee. Can you share with the council what it means to be materially correct?
Yes.
What the definition of material is?
Yes. How the auditing standards work with that is we take a look at benchmarks that are in the financial statements. We look at things like the total assets. We look at revenues. We look at how that breaks down by the different funds. And the audit methodology that we subscribe to provides us guidelines that are used throughout the country to take a percentage of the different assets and liabilities, the revenues, make adjustments to that for specific items. So it's quite a calculation, and we do that for all of what's called opinion units. So we're looking at all of the aggregated information, we're looking at the general fund, the different individual funds that are presented, and we make a mathematical calculation to use as a benchmark to help guide us in terms of sampling sizes and those kinds of things. To most of you, it would probably seem like a fairly large number. I mean, that's one thing that's misunderstood is when people say, oh, you've audited the financial statements, you would have looked at this $500 invoice and realized that item, might not have been correct. And while we sample and look at invoices, our analytics and those kind of things are looking for variances and relationships that don't look right, but it is way bigger than, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars before we would say the financial statements are materially incorrect.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's just a benchmark. If you were to use a lower threshold than what is used in professionally, you would drive the audit cost to a level that no one could sustain, to look at that volume of transactions and go down to a much lower level of analysis. So that's why the accounting profession, the auditing profession, has to use those kinds of guidelines to be able to, do something that's reasonable. And we scope it. It explains here that the scope is that we are to use procedures to find, material errors and find material process flaws in preparing the financial statements. And so we are scoping to find, material items, but we're not going to find items that are very small unless we trip across them in our sampling procedures. So, in addition to rendering that opinion, because we are following so many different standards in doing a governmental audit, there are several other reports that are issued, and they come at the back of the report. When you do a government audit, the government auditing standards require you to have certain qualifications to be the auditor, meet certain CPE requirements, to meet additional independence requirements so that you can operate without any conflict of interest. And then they ask us to look at the laws and regulations and the internal controls that are present to help prepare materially correct financial statements. And so we apply a bunch of tests at that level to examine that thought. And we did not find any internal control situations that we felt were like major design flaws, big material problems with that process. And in our testing of compliance, we also did not come across any instances in the things that we tested where laws and regulations were violated in a significant way. And so that's what this report tells us. We do the same kind of analysis on federal funds. The auditing standards require you to look at federal funds as its own unique population and subset of the county's expenditures. And they ask us to go in and take a look at all of the federal programs that are here, the different grants that are here. We list those out. We do an analysis of those by size and by risk. And we have to pick on a rotational and risk-driven basis certain federal programs to test at a detailed level and see what those controls are like over that program and whether those programs complied with their program requirements. So again, it's not everything, but it's a risk-based approach to reviewing federal funds, and that approach is actually dictated to us through the Office of Management and Budget. They're the ones that lay out those rules. But we have followed all of those rules, and we have looked at your federal funds, and we did not find any control deficiencies that were material weaknesses over your federal funds, nor in the federal funds that we tested did we find a major compliance error where dollars had been spent in a way that you would have to question them and perhaps repay them because they were spent inappropriately. And so that's what we're looking for, is to test those federal funds and have no control or compliance violations. And we also do that with state funds. So in the state of Utah, it's not true in all states, but in the state of Utah, the state auditor's office issues what's called a state compliance audit guide, and they put procedures out there that they require us to do relative to what type of governmental organization you are. And we look at things like the budgets and fund balance and revenue issues and things that are specifically in the state auditor's compliance manual. And so we don't pick and choose what we do in that regard. The state auditor says if they have this, you do this. And so that's what we do. And we did not find any significant violations. If they're minor state compliance things, we put those in our management letter. If they're really significant items, they would go in this report, and we would say, we found a significant compliance violation. So we didn't have any significant ones. There is a minor one in our management letter. So, yes.
And there draws my question. I read the management letter, and so I'm trying to understand some things. So pardon this question, but
Not at all.
do you audit other counties or municipalities? How depth and breadth is your auditing as far as county government and federal government or state government goes? Do you know what I mean on that?
Yes, we have lots of experience in auditing federal and counties and cities. We audit cities. We audit 4 counties right now. I probably audit more federal dollars than any other audit partner in the state of Utah. I do the substantial part of the university's federal funds audit work. We are very experienced in auditing governmental entities.
I found it interesting on the management letter, 2 points. We noted that the county did not post certain notices of public meetings, and then the opening of a cash account.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain those? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, so.
And then also, if you'll detail to me, of this audit, how much is on dollars and cents moving or being in budget and debit, and how much is on, like, to me, this posting of public meetings seems to be outside of a dollar and cents thing. So I just want to get an idea of that.
Yeah, those are great questions. So this particular comment is one that's out of the state compliance manual. So of all the things that you could possibly do, the state auditor goes through that, and one of the things that they've put in the manual that they have deemed to be important, is they've said, we feel it's important that the notices of public meetings, happens and is done. And so that is a procedure that is in that state compliance manual, and there's a suggested audit procedure where we look at the notices or lack thereof for public meetings on a sampling basis and say, were those notices made in accordance with the law? And we must, I don't remember whether it was one or more than one, but we found one, and that's why it's here, is because it's a pass-fail test. As far as the state auditor concerns, you either made the public notice timely or you did not. The judgment comes into play is where we say, well, we don't find that missing one of those public notices is so significant that it's going to go into that state letter, because it doesn't move any dollars, right? There's no dollars that were misspent. There were no, that's a judgment that we get to make. But we've said we will report it because it's a pass-fail test. And so we've put it in the management letter so that those charged with governance know that we are testing a non-financial compliance matter, and there was at least one instance where we did not follow the letter of the law.
So you said non-financial compliance matter. You reference kind of weaknesses, internal control in this management letter, but internal control doesn't have anything to do with non-financial stuff. Internal control is much more of a financial thing,
It tends to be more financial, although when you're dealing with controls over compliance, when we're dealing with federal funds, sometimes, a significant control is, were we making sure that the right eligible person received the services? So like when you test WIC funds at the Bear River Health Department, not only does the recipient need to get the right dollars, but they have to meet certain eligibility criteria to even get those dollars, right? So when we're testing those funds, then we would go into the documentation to see that they've actually certified those people that they're low income or that they're living in this area or whatever those criteria are. And so that would be an example of a non-financial matter that there does need to be control on. You can't just give out WIC dollars to anybody that you want to, and you've got to make sure that the people that are in charge of that, all their neighbors didn't come in and get, WIC vouchers as well. So it's a little bit of both, but the focus on controls is heavy towards, can we get materially correct financial information issued and pulled together in our system so that you have and annual reports have accurate information to make decisions from. That is the emphasis of it. The cash account, one of the things that we do, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that in looking at fraud, and we're trying to be very sensitive to that, and we're charged to that. One of the things I've learned over the years, by good and sad experience, is when cash accounts show up, and we can find them, and we have ways that we look for them by contacting banks and doing inquiries and other things. If we find a cash account that isn't on the government entity's books, the county, the city, the school district, whatever, that has some concern to us. Now, this particular cash account was set up by a nonprofit organization, but they had used the county's ID number. So they were doing something that the county was involved with, and somebody thought it was a good idea, but rather than instructing them to go get this cash account in their own name with their own ID number, they used a county ID number. But the people that are keeping the books of the county didn't know about that, and that account was not in our books. And while it only had a little bit of money in it, very, very immaterial, I have learned that cash accounts not on the books are potential exit wounds. When we have a cash account that we don't know about, that is a really good spot where cash can be funneled to a place you don't want it to go. And I'm not going to help you find it because I don't even know it's there, because I'm auditing the books and the records of the county, but I found a cash account that was yours that wasn't in your books. And so even though it only had a little $50 in it, I don't really care. I want the control process to say, we are very diligent in making sure if the county ID number is used, it gets on the books.
So that brings up the question, and that's why I was headed there. So do you look at a check written and verify and go back and check that as a spot check? Or are you only looking at a statement ledger, or what are you doing on that as the depth of your audit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it depends on what we're testing. I would say we do more at the ledger level than we do the detail level. But when we are testing certain account balances, receivables or expenditures or revenues or certain compliance tests, we are at the transactional level. We're pulling invoices, looking at purchase orders, looking at approvals, but we do that on a sampling basis. When you get into sampling theory, rarely do you have a population in excess of 60 items, irregardless of how big of dollars you're working with. Sampling theory will tell you within an accuracy limit of 90% interval or a 95% interval, a sample size of 60 gives you a very good confidence interval. So again, relative to the universe of the number of transactions, the populations seem kind of small, but that it is well within statistical auditing theory. What we do, this particular one, we incorporate a process in our firm based on our experience where we tend to reach out to banks and say, tell us all of the bank accounts that you have with this ID number. And then we compare that to see if all of those accounts have shown up somewhere in the general ledger system.
So Mike, I have a question. I'm concerned about this account because we opened an account for the Cache Valley Women's Suffrage.
Mm-hmm.
And is that this account?
I wasn't the lead auditor this
Okay.
year. I was the concurring partner, so Jason could tell you that, but I cannot off the top of my head.
Okay.
But that would be the kind of thing that we would want to discuss with the finance department. And if you open an account, it's absolutely, and you're using a county ID number, that information has got to get to the finance department so they put that on their books.
Now,
They did know about it.
Yeah, now Cameron, I gave you that
Eric could
account
probably
number,
tell us. He
yeah.
would know better
Can
than-
you tell me if this is that account or not?
To my knowledge, yes, it is this
Okay,
same
yeah.
account. And the account number that, or the tax ID number that I got from you is not one that I recognize, but
Okay,
it was
yeah.
traced back with the treasurer's office. I know he's not here, but it was a county number from the treasurer's office. So.
Yeah, all right, so the proper process for us then is to close that account out and get it off the county books, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
you-
we'll
you'd
take
wanna
care of
open a new
that.
account with a different ID number.
Was there a large sum of money that was funneled through that sent up a red flag?
No. We never sent, there was no money from the county that went into that. It was just the county's, and a tax ID number that was associated to the county.
So has that account been closed out then by the county?
I would think so, but that would have to defer to Craig McAllister, to our
Okay,
treasurer.
good deal. That's what I needed to know, because Gina and I both discussed that, and we were wondering if that was the case.
Okay,
So
yeah.
thank you.
And for the record,
Concerned me that it was Gina and,
the
was involved in
troublemakers.
that. Gina and Barbara, and that would send up a red flag anyway.
I'm gonna sit down.
Yeah.
We
So,
did get
we-
permission from the previous county attorney to do that, and it checked with him, so it wasn't like we ran to finance.
And
Hey, we're gonna do this. He told
And
us
we
to
certainly
do it.
haven't put in here saying, wow, something super, super bad happened. I'm approaching it more from the process and control side. It says, we just want to be really careful that, and what you opened and even using that ID number may have been completely legitimate.
Okay,
I just want every cash account that's associated with the county for Cameron to know about so that he's seeing that there's bank reconciliations and what that activity level is. Because if you had a bad thing happen in that kind of a situation and money's gone, I don't know where it went because it could go to an account I can't see.
well, and I appreciate that,
I'm
yeah.
doing it out of an abundance of caution
As well
and
you
good
should.
procedure,
you
not
should,
that a
that's
bad
right.
thing happened.
Okay,
Which is good, because that goes into the third point on your letter, right? You note that the communication among those charged with governance, elected official, and county staff could at times result in limited communication between the two groups. So Joan Simpkins is really saying you recommend open, transparent communication across all levels of the county in order to address potential risks as material misstatement. Now, we haven't had any material misstatements, but you did find a few instances of immaterial things, so we need to make sure that just like the discussion we had here today is open and transparent and people aren't holding things for days on end and funneling it through one person. We should be able to be transparent through the
We
organization.
do, and we know, to be perfectly, kind of blunt here, that in any government organization that we work in, we're not always going to agree all the time. And in the counties, we're kind of set up where we have a lot of duty segregation, right? We have different elected officials doing different things. We have people trying to understand what their statutory responsibilities are. We've got lots of different moving parts, in a county. And I've audited governments for a lot of years. I've audited a lot of counties over the years. And we're going to just have disagreements sometimes. That's just the way it is. But I think it's just really important to make a professional commitment as those charged with governance, the council, elected officials, that even while we're disagreeing, we don't ever communicate in such a way that anybody feels like they're so in jeopardy that a concern or a fact or a question can't be asked or brought up or told something to the auditor because they're just going to get into tons of trouble. And we're doing that. I think even in our disagreements, it's really important that the tone from those charged with governance is above all else. We are transparent. We are honest. We don't come down on people for asking honest questions or bringing up honest issues. We want that tone. And so this was really put in there in the spirit of we're aware. We were aware through the audit. We had questions asked to us. We had people ask us to look at certain things, and that's all fine. That's part of the audit process. But I just want to remind the people at the top that we want to have a commitment to a very professional tone so that people can communicate and nobody feels an undue incentive to not be transparent. That's blunt, but that's how I feel.
I think it's great.
So it's just a reminder. I didn't find anything that I would say this is what happened or this is what we saw or this comes more from a lot of experience doing this.
Let me tap into that experience. I'm new, so when I look at this budget from a government standpoint, it's different than what I'm used to on the outside world. So miscellaneous seems to be a broad scope of things. Do you have a guide, or should a budget have a percent of what goes to miscellaneous instead of what's categorized as office equipment or capital expense or whatever else? And if you do have a guideline on that, is it a percent or what? When do you see so much miscellaneous that you're like, shouldn't we track this miscellaneous down to a better cost effect or budget part or line item? Does that make sense?
You bet. And I think that, I don't know if there is a rule, exactly that would be out there for that, but I don't disagree, in principle with your sentiment is to, my philosophy of budgeting is, I think department heads need to be, very, very involved. They know what their operations are the best. They should be outlining it. But in that same tone that we were just talking about, there really isn't, in my opinion, any good incentive to not be reasonably detailed, because what are we trying to hide? Nothing, right? What we want to do is just put out there in the budgeting process what it is we need and where we intend to spend that money. And so, while obviously you can get to a ridiculous level of detail that's just where we're wasting time, monitoring it, I would agree that we ought to be able to say, hey, let's establish a percentage, something that as a collective rule of thumb that we can say, in about that level, that would be appropriate. But if you're putting, hundreds of $1,000s of miscellaneous, couldn't we have a little more transparency than that so that we can, see what's really happening?
We label it as this or that.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in agreement with the spirit of your comment. I don't know that I have a dollar rule to throw out there for you. You'll find such a wide variety. I mean, I have governments that I work with that I think they're down to a dollar level. It's sort of like capitalizing equipment. Like some entities will capitalize and depreciate. Their policy might be a $300 item. In my opinion, that's a waste of time. I don't have time to capitalize a monitor. It's $300, right? But at the same time, I wouldn't have a $100,000 threshold either and say, wow, we're just expensing everything. We never capitalize it. We don't know where all these trucks are. We don't know. We have to have a reasonable level. So I have a better rule of thumb for capitalization. My rule of thumb is $5,000. If it's over $5,000, I want it on the list so I can find it and see what it is. I think, you need to, my philosophy is to let your budget officer lead, but then if you're not comfortable, try to provide some guidance in that area. But I do believe transparency is a really important principle. I believe it solves a lot of problems.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? And then number 4 is just a reminder that we have a very substantial standard coming at us related to leases. And so the way we account for them, the way we report them, the information that we need about them is significantly going to be impacted in the future. And I know Cameron is on top of this, but I'm still trying to just caution all of my clients that don't underestimate this standard. It requires some work and some gathering for us to be able to report and disclose the new information that this standard is going to require. Okay. Other questions or concerns or comments? Again, we think the audit went very well. We had a lot of cooperation, met with a lot of people, felt very good about the process this year. And, in whole, your numbers are very good. You had a very good year. Your increases to fund balance and the county, in my opinion, is in pretty solid financial footing.
2 more questions.
Sure.
How much time does it take for you to do the audit? And how much time is our county officials or county employees doing to help you with the audit?
A whole bunch on both sides. A whole bunch. Our budget for this audit, in terms of our budgeted hours, was probably, we probably have between, I don't know, around 400 to 500 man hours to do this audit from my people. I don't know, what do you got, 2 hours, Cameron, to get ready?
We do a number of things throughout the year to be ready to draft, right? But, so a number of things throughout the year, but really, probably beginning towards the middle to end of February, I've got my senior accountant full-time about working on the audit to have it. The draft is one thing. We have that format built. We can dump our trial balance into it, but then just going through those accounts and doing reviews to make sure that we feel like everything's been classified properly and so forth. There are a lot of hours that go into it.
I would say one nice thing here, just in terms of understanding the process. I have audited counties before where I've made almost 100 adjusting journal entries, fixes that I have proposed. When you're in that type of auditing environment, I feel like you can still do a quality audit, but it's very challenging because you're adjusting the numbers and you haven't spent so much effort in finding and fixing. We don't have very many adjustments here. And I think one that speaks to the, you've got some good people that are working, but also the quality of the time that we can spend is better. Because when I'm not having to fix a whole bunch of accounting issues, I can spend a lot more time doing analysis and relationship analytics and looking at the whole process and statements back and forth, really looking, deeply, are things looking and feeling like they should? when you just start looking at something and you go, well, that's obviously wrong, and this balance is wrong, and that balance can't be right, all of a sudden you've just diverted so much of your attention in trying to fix those problems. And so I feel like the audit that you are able to get here is quite a good product because you have really good inputs coming from your accounting department, above average from the clients that I have.
So if I heard you right then, our staff, our county staff's really good, and they rarely make journal entries.
They make a lot, but they don't make a lot of errors that I end up correcting.
Okay.
The level of expertise that you have at this county in your accounting department is quite good compared to some of the other counties that I audit. I mean, you've got people that are very experienced, CPAs, people that really understand. A lot of the government entities that I've audited over the years, they do not have the technical ability to draft this financial statement. It takes quite a bit of expertise to be able to do it.
Sorry for another question, but do you go past Cameron? Do you go to other departments and
Oh,
say,
yes.
answer me this? So you
Oh,
have
yes.
free reign when you're doing that? And
Absolutely, I do.
And do you make sure you check every department, everybody's got a budget, or how does that go? Does that make sense?
No, more than auditing the budgets, our focus really is on the financial statement numbers. And so, we really are looking at saying, is that cash balance right? Are the receivables right? Are the payables right? Are the fixed assets right? And we do those procedures. But relative to where I can reach to get the information I need, it is heavily focused in Cameron's area, but I have free reign, and when I'm testing at the transaction level, if I have a question on something I'm looking at from the sheriff's department, we absolutely will go sit down and say, I don't understand this documentation. Can you tell me what's going on here? I mean, we would try with Cameron first, but no, that's something we're very insistent on. We do not, and by standards, cannot allow a client to shield us from things that we are interested in or want to see. That would actually be a scope limitation that I would have to report on, and you would not get what we call a clean or unmodified opinion. I would say feel like we were shielded from access. It's very important that we have open access to everything that we want to know about.
That's part of the transparency.
It is very much.
Being able to see.
It is very much, part of the transparency and I think Cameron and his people, they understand that. I can honestly say I've never felt like that his office has ever tried to shield me from information. I think he knows me well enough that would not fly at all.
So those charged with governance here, you would say should be afforded that same professionalism?
To be able to look at whatever they want to look at? I think you need to be respectful of people's time and make appropriate requests, but yeah, it would be rare that a person charged with governance should be shielded from information. I would agree with that.
The only concerning thing would be their time issue, but if we could.
I think you need to be professional, and I think you need to be considerate of people's time. And it's kind of like one thing, as an example I would give, I try to tell my younger auditors, even when they're working with Cameron, be respectful of his time. Let's group our questions. Make sure you've asked questions to other people on my team that might be able to easily answer that question, versus I could allow my people to run in and bother Cameron every 2 or 3 minutes and say, well, what's this and how is this and can you explain this? And while he would probably do that for us, I don't feel that is a very professional way to interact with him and respect, the fact that he's trying to accommodate an audit plus doing his regular job. So it would sort of be in that vein that I would speak to that.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Mike. That was
Thank
very
you.
informative. Thank you so much. And we
Very
appreciate
much
your time.
appreciate the opportunity to do the work. We really love Cache County as one of our clients.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we are past the 5:30 time, so we need to set some public hearings. Our first one is set a public hearing for June 12, 2022, ordinance 2022-20, the Vibel, is that how you say it, Vabel? How do you say it?
Fable.
Vabel, thank you. Vabel rezone. A request to rezone 4.36 acres from the agricultural A10 zone to the rural 2 RU2 zone located at 1845 North, 8000 West in Petersboro.
Madam Chair, it's probably July.
I thank you. For July?
It says June.
It does. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just reading and didn't even pay attention. Thank you, July 12th. So all of these will be July 12th. Okay. Thank you. All right. Very good.
Madam Chair, I move that we set a public hearing for July 12th for both ordinance 2022-20, these are tongue twisters.
Yeah.
Ordinance 2022-21, the Bible rezone, whatever that was, sorry.
Babel,
And
yeah.
Babel.
Yeah.
That reminds me of Weibel, I have a friend whose name is Weibel. The Babel rezone and the Jershon Ranch rezone.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we're setting a public hearings for July 12th, 2022 for ordinances 2022-20, 20, and 2022-21. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. All right, we also have a resolution 2022-20, a resolution approving the appointment of representatives to the boards of trustees for the Cornish and Newton Cemetery districts. And let me bring that up here. Read those names.
I've got it, you want me to read them?
That'd be great. Thank you, Cordy.
Okay, they're from Cornish, we got Raymond Pitcher, he's a current board member, and Kyle Pitcher, a current board member. And then from Newton, you got Dan Douglas, Penny Douglas, and Casey Crosby.
I wonder if they're related.
They're all current board members.
Great.
Like I'm wondering, I would guess they are.
Yeah, I assume.
It's a family affair.
Yeah. There you go.
Hey, very good.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve.
Need a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
public hearing.
Anybody here for that?
Oh, yeah.
If you're here for that and you'd like to come up and speak, we'd love to hear from you. We don't get people from Cornish very often. Move to close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Seconded. It's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing. And we've had a motion and a second to approve resolution.
Well, we got to
We have to
do an
wait
initial
till we get to
consideration.
11.
So I was looking at that.
Oh, okay. It's on initial consideration.
You do it later.
You have a motion and a second to close the public meeting. You get to vote.
Okay.
Oh dear.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. All right, thanks, you guys. I appreciate your help. All right, we will now go back to items of special interest, our community reinvestment area report from Sean Milne, our economic development director.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Council. I hope I can liven you up with something a little sexier than an annual audit. It is, well, it's economic development, so I think it should be a fairly easy job here.
I don't know when we can question if our chair and our previous chair, if their special thing was above board. That was pretty exciting.
Well, that sounds like bait that I'm not going to take. I waded into that. That's only on me. Okay. Okay, well, Madam Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity to have an audience with you this evening. I want to take an opportunity to review what CRAs are and hopefully help demystify them. If you have any questions about them, please don't hesitate to ask them as we go along, or there's going to be certainly ample opportunity at the end of this too. I hope to move quickly, but still want to respect the fact that if you have any questions, stop me. I also want to acknowledge this evening that we have Alan Luce, the city manager of North Logan. We have Matt Hollyoak with Maloof, And we have Mayor Larry Jacobson and City Manager Justin Mon of Nibley that are here because of the germane qualities of this presentation to their respective entities. So, what is a CRA? CRAs are community reinvestment areas or community project areas or community reinvestment agencies. Oftentimes you'll see these used interchangeably to either mean, the geophysical location, arbitrary lines on a map, if you will, for the project area, or the governing body. The governing body is whoever the local jurisdiction is. If we were to have something in Benson, for example, you would be the agency, but something in Nibley or North Logan, it will be their city council that is the agency. What are CRAs? CRAs are essentially the most basic premise of an economic development tool. You'll oftentimes hear the term incentives thrown around with economic development. And in regards to that, CRAs are a means to incentivizing or rewarding desired economic activities or outcomes. These are oftentimes, as stated here, used to retain existing employers if they're consistent with what your community objectives are. Those might be, as an example, a headquarters because they're going to export corporate profits. Great example of this would be Bentonville, Arkansas. Bentonville, Arkansas loves Walmart because all the Walmarts export, their profits, their corporate profits back to Bentonville, Arkansas, but without having to have some of the costs associated with all the franchise or corporate-owned stores throughout the nation, right? So all those stores will export that. So you typically want headquarters of big operations or to recruit new ones. It may be that with your direction or that of the CED, the County Economic Development Advisory Board, you may give an individual like me some direction to say, we would like to recruit X industry to Cache Valley. We think it's a good fit for us. It's what we want to be when we grow up, however you might look at that, right? So these are good focuses for using this kind of a tool. There used to be EDAs, RDAs, CRAs that were different, and a couple of years ago, the state legislature just grouped them all together and said, let's get rid of some of the nuanced differences between these economic development areas, commercial development areas, and redevelopment areas. But one of the ways that these have been used most prominently in our state's history for the last couple of decades is if you have an aging or blighted area, like a historic downtown. This is oftentimes an overlay that you would put, and Logan has one of those as an example. Well, they did. It actually expired last year. CRAs can be used for that as well. And they can be used in a couple of different ways. One for a specific employer, like we have here represented by Maloof tonight, and by the end of the presentation, that will make more sense. A particular type of industry, like I mentioned a moment ago, it could be industry X, it could be manufacturing aerospace, right? If you're Weber County, that one would be a big one to you. Same for Box Elder with Northrop Grumman. Or it could be just a targeted geographic area, which will make sense with the North Logan City comparison later. So how do they provide these kind of outcomes? There's two ways. One of them is proactive. You could set it for a specific commercial purpose. As stated here, you want to make sure that it integrates with your general plan. In other words, if you're going to go about incentivizing certain activities or outcomes, you want to make sure that you have zoning in place, that if you're going to attract businesses to an area, you have a zone that envisions that kind of development taking place within a portion of your jurisdiction. You'd go out and educate your stakeholders, as you saw during your workshop today. Oh, Jack, that is right here, sir. Sorry for the interruption. This is yours.
I'm sorry for you.
No.
We've been trying to call you, Jack.
No, we were just reading your texts out loud periodically as they popped up.
Sorry.
No problem. See you. You'd educate stakeholders as much as you'd educate the marketplace that you have such an investment vehicle. And then when one of them pops up and shows that they're interested, you'd negotiate with them. Likewise, in the reactive approach, you do the same thing. You might have, and this happens fairly often with EDC Utah, Economic Development Corporation of Utah, they'll have specific Fortune 5000 companies, for example, come to the state. Almost every state has an EDCU, equivalent, and they will code name it a project name. For obvious reasons, they want to make sure that they're a little bit shielded from their closest competitors, from knowing that they might be looking at a particular market. And so that project name will come out to economic development directors like myself with certain qualifications that we must meet if we want to respond and say, hey, we would like to put in a bid for getting your attention when you winnow down the list to site visits. And so this being kind of a reactive approach, it will be kind of like this for Maloof. All right, so I'm going to zip through this for the sake of time, but feel free to stop me if something catches your attention. The next few slides we're going to zip through, but this just goes through the process. You need to create a project area plan and the accompanying budget for that plan, which would be a term of time, a duration, as well as how you expect to receive your revenues. And then the agency or local legislative body, like I mentioned earlier, becomes the governing entity of that pool of monies that I'll explain here a little bit more in a moment. And this is that. An agreed to portion of the taxes collected within the project area become restricted funds. They are under the governance or control of that agency, that CRA in terms of agency. And so you'll have typically sales and use tax and property taxes that come into this budget, and they must be spent within the area and for expressed economic development purposes. So it is fairly narrow in scope, but state statute sets these aside in the enabling language. Like I said here already, revenues are often a combination of sales and use tax and property taxes, and they are oftentimes used to reimburse associated development costs. Predominantly, but not always. Some of those development costs may be infrastructure, roads, water and sewer, utilities, a workforce development program, particularly used in blighted communities, of which I cannot think of one here. But if you are a particular county in southern Utah right now and you've had a major agribusiness employer leave and their county commissioners have declared a state of emergency because of that major employer leaving and the tax base and employment with, it may be that you all of a sudden find yourselves in an unenviable position of having to figure out something new to become overnight. And you could utilize some of these monies for a workforce education campaign, as well as reimbursing a builder or developer for buildings and or capital equipment. This is something that is oftentimes overlooked, and it may not be as germane to the county, though I think it could be, as it is oftentimes the school years. But there's something called a base year. And a base year is what you would be collecting now. So envision, if you will, the Main Street area. To figure out whatever hypothetical you want as a northern and southern boundary for the Main Street area here in Logan. And within this geographic area of maybe a block east and a block west of Maine, you realize that you would like to engage a CRA in order to kind of revitalize it. Well, whatever taxes you're getting now, you're going to continue to get even if you engage in a typical incentive package or a CRA to make it technical here. Whatever you're getting now is your base year, right? And as you move forward and market those properties and you say to somebody, you know what, there's a lot of downtown businesses that are not ADA compliant, they're small and narrow, and they're just not conducive to the modern shopping experience. So we're obviously kind of talking a retail paradigm here. You could incent by saying, if you bring in upsized water and sewer and you're willing to demolish the raising costs, RAZE costs, of tearing down some buildings and building some new buildings that are taller and more modern and fit what the local populace is looking for, and it fits your general plan, you'll get the taxes that you get now no matter what. But if you were to remit 90, 60, whatever the percentage might be of taxes back to that developer to help them pay for some of those infrastructure costs, it's important to note that whatever percentage you give up is on the new money that's created after what's called a trigger year. It does not give away your current budgetary expectation of a base year, okay? All right, this is just, you obviously want to negotiate with the other partners, who the agency will actually be. You do that up front. Make sure that everybody has a meeting of the minds in legal terms, and make sure that you're managing expectations. I'm going to scan through this real quick to just get to where they're all on one slide. Oh, excuse me. The process for this is you develop your project area plan with an accompanying budget. I've mentioned that earlier. You work with other stakeholders. I've mentioned that as well. You have a public hearing process, so it's above board. It's totally transparent to the public. There's a very specific routine that the state has spelled out in statute. You would adopt formally once you're finished with the public process and your negotiations with the municipalities that are participating or specific employers, that plan and budget, so it becomes official, and then you, of course, record those documents and post them for public review. All right, now to the real brass tacks of why this is germane. I mentioned at a time last year that I was here seeking your input for a grant application. I was kind of giving you an update that I was working on a total of 4, at that time, possible deals. One of those, I can tell you, in my conversations with both the business and a totally different municipal entity, I had advised that it would not be the county's best interest to participate in that particular deal. The reason why I want to tell you that is because I don't want you to perceive that any time a municipality really wants a deal or a corporation wants the use of incentives, that it will always be in your best interests. And so I'm your advocate first and foremost. In this particular case, the possibility could have been that they would shop member municipalities within the county. It is generally not a county's best interest to pick and choose municipal winners within your boundaries. This might be different if it were Brigham City versus North Logan City. I'm obviously Team Cache County, right? I'm going to advocate for you, and if there's a real risk of losing them to Brigham City and you want them, that'd be a different scenario. So they opted not to go forward, and their deal is already going forward with the city. Their project is moving forward, but they haven't come forward for an incentive. Another one is possibly forthcoming. So out of those 4, we have 2, and coincidentally, they're both neck and neck for wanting to be before you again here very shortly. As soon as perhaps the next meeting, if that would be to your liking, or if there's some needed time to address questions or concerns, or familiarize you more with any questions you might have, maybe a little bit longer. Those are Nibley and North Logan City. For Nibley's sake, we have a specific project. Remember, I mentioned that there are a couple of different ways that you could come forward with a benefit to using one of these. And one of those was a specific project or employer, and in this particular case, it is Maloof. It is notable here that even before you'd created this position a year and a half ago, which I now occupy, the county, through Executive Craig Butters, had expressed a willingness for the county to work with the city of Nibley, and so did the school district and Maloof and the state. That's important because the state was approached by Maloof and said, we're thinking of creating a scenario through our mergers and acquisitions where we're knee deep in, we're growing by leaps and bounds, 1,200 jobs. Just a few, literally just a few shy of 1,200 jobs over the next 10 years, or $120 million total investment. And so with that set of confidence from the other local taxing entities that could be participating, us being included, they went forth, and the GoEd board, GoEO now, approved them for those incentives not to exceed a $14.4 million cap over the 10 years, mostly from their perspective in wages, right? Because for GoEd to participate, and this is important for us, you want to increase your local median wage. And so it has to be at 110% of the county's current median wage. So they, being able to satisfy that expectation and demand of the state, were awarded that state incentive on the good faith they'd be able to work with the local entities. And so here we are with them. Now, why this is good, for all the reasons noted here, for the sake of the audio recording and those that might watch it later on YouTube, They will create a large employment base. They already are a large employer. They're just going to add that many more. Their average wages will increase the median wage. Increase discretionary spending among those that have those wages, which has the multiplier effect, and this is what I mean. If you are an area with local homegrown retail and or even some corporate retail, and you want folks to be able to afford the niceties of life, and therefore, as a government entity, as uncomfortable as this may be, sometimes, we have to admit that you survive a good portion of your budget off sales and use tax. And so we, of course, want folks to buy items with their discretionary funds here locally, not in Salt Lake, not in Ogden, right? We acknowledge that that happens, but to the extent we can encourage more locally, that's the multiplier effect that you would want. So when you have small fledgling businesses or entrepreneurs in your community, having a multiplier effect just means that those with good discretionary income levels then turn around and cycle it through the economy, and it's even healthier for your local base. Reportable profits, in this particular case, like I mentioned earlier, this is a headquarters. And them being able to report their taxes here is our equivalent of being Bentonville, Arkansas for Walmart. Significant increase to property taxes. Now, Councilman Erickson brought this up last year, a philosophical point that he brought up about cornfields and how they look beautiful versus, buildings sometimes. And I can certainly appreciate that, and everybody's going to have our sense of where that balance may be. In this particular case, it will convert some that are greenbelt taxes into significantly higher property taxes because there'll be commercial buildings and capital equipment and facilities. And then, of course, specific to the city of Nibley, they're very, very grateful for the one retail outlet they have right now in the Maverick gas station, but this will significantly help them to further diversify their economy, which keeps their residential property taxes low. The next one is North Logan City. This one here is a proactive type. They do not have specific employers in mind per se. They are, of course, having conversations with some, but what they're offering here is a mix of 4 different regions, and thus in subsequent documents, we will be prepared to discuss, particulars with you, a different rate of participation based upon these different zones. Here's an example of what I might mean by that. It is not typical to incent residential development because in the state of Utah, most of us know that we're only paying property taxes on 55% of our valuation of our home. We get a 45% coupon rate. So you will literally pay the same mill levy multiplied at only 55% of your value of your home, whereas a business on the same block will pay the same mill levy on 100% valuation. So it's important to note that in Utah, we have good schools, we have good roads and good public safety because of corporations disproportionately paying a significant portion of property taxes. And so you don't typically incent residential. Well, these 4 different zone types will have different types of uses within them. To that extent, here's why it's advantageous for them to come to you. It's obviously a proactive and intentional approach, and just like we're spending a lot of time on updating our general plan, so too are they. And so this assists with their objectives of their general plan. It also provides a mechanism for the city to add infrastructure and revitalize, specifically the South Main Street zone that they've got as one of those 4, while keeping residential property taxes low. And what I mean by that is, like noted earlier, this is typically a mechanism, CRAs, to reimburse developers or a city or some other public jurisdiction for the costs associated with providing water, sewer, streets. Things that you need to do to plan ahead for growth. But to do that, as you were approached earlier during your workshop session, sometimes that's a bond. It can be a sales tax or revenue bond, or it can be, property tax bond. Whatever the case may be, these vehicles will typically add costs. Obviously, growth doesn't come for free. So if not to your residential, then it would seem, and is the generally accepted norm, to ask for those that are bringing about some of the growth to pay their way. And so if you're going to take an undeveloped area, greenfield we'll typically call it, and a particular business interest wants to develop on the periphery and you need to upgrade the water and sewer, you can use CRAs as a vehicle to help make them pay for that, but you can also upsize that capacity for future growth. But what you cannot do as a local jurisdiction, either as a city or a county, is make them pay for anything more than what they will bring about. So if you want to upsize it so you don't have to tear up the road in 3 or 5 years when the next one comes along, is you can upsize it at the front end, but you can use this in that restricted funds sort of way to reimburse, so that they're not paying for anything more than they need specifically, but that you can upsize it once when you put it in and not have to rebuild the road and upsize and waste materials in just a few short years. And then just like with the Nibley example, it helps to further diversify their revenue base. All right, so last 2 slides. The key takeaways that I'd like you to have from this is that these are economic tools, CRAs, that they can be used as vehicles to spur targeted investments within communities, within the county, and that it's for the greater good. Something that I oftentimes have used in my previous role as well as this one is, but for the use of CRAs, you wouldn't see this kind of investment typically happen, because we don't have to like it, but other municipalities and counties in the state of Utah do this. And to the extent that they will use incentives to attract growth, they do it at our expense if they induce our current companies to leave or to altogether not select us in the first place if they're looking to expand west of the Mississippi or inland from the coast of California, whatever the case may be. And so if not for these, you can get 100% of zero, or you can get a percentage of something much bigger as it grows with time, like the Maloof example, since I can be so specific about $120 million capital investment. If they're wooed away by somewhere else to the benefit of their use of incentives, we'll get 100% of zero, or we can get a percentage of something that grows, and then after the term expires, we get 100% of it. All right, and then the next steps. Both the cities and Maloof have these proposed projects and are preparing those interlocal agreements that I discussed as part of the steps. They've worked and developed their plan. They've got their draft budget. I can provide those documents, Madam Chair and Council, to you digitally because they're quite comprehensive. I didn't want to kill any more trees than I needed to. I do have this slide presentation available for you in hard copy tonight, but I can provide you a sample interlocal agreement for one of these projects. The other one can be drafted or is in process, as well as their area plans. And then as a result of that, they would like us to bring both of their projects to you for a more formal presentation of each one individually, and then ask for your vote or any kind of a concern that you might have or questions to the process or what might be in it for the county. And that's about it. This is the final slide. So at this point, Madam Chair, I turn the time to the council if you have any questions for me on CRAs generally or these 2 particular projects. Nolan, Mr. Gunnell.
2. You talked about a base set, and you referred to the main street of Logan, 1 block east, 1 block west, and says, okay, you take that tax and you don't go above it. How does that work when you're taking, as you said, greenfields and developing it? You don't have a base for tax on that. Do you follow me?
Yeah, you do, because the green belt is part of your base, but you'll convert that back like
you would want for what you were saying.
And therein is the possible benefit. Because while I respect, and I think we all do, and particularly after the workshop session earlier, and wanting to preserve open space, and we can, for the purposes of this argument, let's just conflate open space to mean currently worked ag land, trails, manicured parks and rec. Let's just call all of that open space for the time being. There are obviously differences because Greenbelt is being worked and it's paying some property tax. If it's bona fide parks and rec, it's probably owned by another governmental entity and it's not paying any taxes. But for the purposes of this, it's a fairly de minimis amount that you, the county, and even the school district, who gets roughly 70% of the property tax bill, is collecting off that land. However, I don't have the graphic readily available here, but you'll see in the documentation for the project area plan for Maloof, the current Maloof building and a lot of open space, a lot of green worked fields. Those, as you note, are paying very little into that area. The current building obviously is paying some into the area. What it currently pays is also part of your base year. So any incentives given on creating their more official headquarters building, just to back up here, on the slide you see that large rectangular building on the right-hand side. That is the current Maloof building that was once more warehousing and now largely office space. Clearly indicative of their growth. They've converted a lot of that in the last year. Wouldn't you say like 50%, Matt? Like it's significant what you've converted from warehousing space to office space with working professionals. And the transient nature of those goods in and out, Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, but those would be a little bit harder to calculate than, say, some of the processing equipment on personal property taxes or fixed assets and what it does to your tax base.
Yeah, the goods that are moving in and out are not, it's the equipment.
So by converting that to office spaces, they've changed the taxing structure somewhat, but the great news is you've got a lot of jobs. Again, the discretionary income from higher than median wage jobs. Adding another capital facility like the headquarters, which is that rounded building and obviously improvements to the campus there, you're going to take away some of the aesthetic, but you're obviously building up the tax base. So there's a base year in the current building remaining that isn't eroded by any ask for use of incentives. Did I answer your question?
But isn't that area already designed as a business park?
Mayor or Justin, would you like to chime in on that?
It was.
As a bona fide business park or just a? Okay.
But it's definitely in our plan for commercial development in that area.
Okay, second question, you talked about taking ground or houses and putting businesses and you get more of a tax, but as I sat through last year, and Kathleen, you can help us on this, as you look at the tax, it seems to change from residential to business, right? Because it goes through, how's that tax being attributed coming into the county based on if a residential house goes up this year, the cost or the taxes we get from businesses go down this year.
Are you talking tax shift?
Commensurate, yes, that would be true. Creates a shift.
Yes, so if we shift from houses to buildings, how does that shift interplay into there?
Again, it depends on the value. He already mentioned that commercial businesses are taxed at 100%.
Right.
Where homes receive a 45%
You're at
exemption.
55.
So what's happened in the last few years, typically this isn't the case, but in the last few years, what we've seen is an increase in market value of homes, and commercial businesses, land and buildings have not increased at the same rate. So that's where the shift in taxes come. These have gone up greater than these, so when the rate drops, it's reducing commercial tax liability. It is not reducing residential. So the shift is moving to residential. Does that?
That helps. Do we ever see often the shift go the other way? So in the recession time?
Not very often.
Not very often.
Further complicating this is the fact that counties by state statute must assess every parcel once every 5 years. And this is not going to make it any less painful or poignant for a homeowner or a business going through tax increases the way that they see them and experience them. However, taken in the aggregate over time, am I right to say in theory it levels out over time? Because you're reassessing every property every 5 years. It's just that you're in a lag. Correct me in this, Kathleen, but in most counties, they will do a fifth of their parcels per year to reassess. So where some are behind, and I think Councilman Erickson is kind of alluding to this when he says it does or can catch up. If you have if all things were equal and you could stabilize an economy for a 5-year period and you what's that?
What am I saying?
That it can catch up. That it can catch up.
No, I'm back to the cornfields too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm probably waxing philosophical at this point.
So Sean, what the desire is, Maloof is in this CRA, is some tax breaks so that they can build that round world building. Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, in a crude, short way, yes. I know that that's not quite the same because it's not really a tax break. It's a reimbursement for the improvements that they'll make upon the property. By state statute and in technical terms, everybody must pay their taxes. These folks will pay their taxes as would anybody that moves into the North Logan City area. They pay their taxes, they're collected, they're just sent to the CRA, the agency, put in a restricted fund, and they can reimburse them back to the company or the developer or the municipality, whoever paid for those improvements. Whatever is negotiated in the original agreement, that interlocal agreement, they will reimburse. So what it basically becomes is, go ahead, Erickson.
We've actually already been doing this up on Main Street with those car companies. They always come in and they want you to defer taxes for 5 years or something as they invest in their structures and as they get their business up and going, and then after so many years of allowing the money to go back in to help them with the purchase of or with the paying of their buildings and whatnot, then they come back on it 100% after a certain amount of time. So what you're saying here in this is that place where that round building out there in Maloof is just now a big old flat pad. In fact, I think they used it as a parking lot when they had that craziness going on last week. But anyway, I'm assuming that's what they're asking to do, and that's what you're kind of sharing with us. It would be a possibility.
Yes, Councilman, you're spot on. Thank you for saying it more succinctly than I could.
Sean,
I said it in farmer terms. You use these fancy slides. It's hard to understand.
I'm sorry. But thank you for helping me. Okay.
Yeah, say you've done a good job.
A quick question, and hopefully can give a quick answer here. It's probably a difficult question, but I think it's one that has to be asked that I think is always in the back of the legislative body's minds. When we do something like this and we invest in it, what's the likelihood that that business sticks around? And I don't mean it in any against Maloof or anybody in North Logan, but I feel I have to ask that question. Have you seen places where they go through all that and then they just, 3 years later they take off and
I have.
wasted?
Nope, it's a fair question, and I personally can attest, yes, I have seen those. The good news is, and believe me when I say this is my trimmed down version, because over the weekend I made this much more complex than it needed to be. This is my trimmed down version. I had a whole slide on, some best practices, and one of those, these should always be post-performance, meaning that on an annual basis, when negotiated well, they don't get their annual reimbursement, which typically will go to pay principal and interest on a financing vehicle, unless they've met or continued to meet what was agreed upon in the original interlocal agreement. By that, I might mean, a hypothetical scenario here, Company A. Company A says they're going to bring 500 good-paying jobs at 130% of your median wages. Yeah, short.
Short answer.
Short answer. Yes, I have seen that.
Okay.
If you structure the deal properly, you can mitigate your risk.
Mitigate it, okay. Thank you, Sean.
very good. Okay. All right, Sean, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, we're way past time here for a public hearing, so thank you for your information, and we will look to set up some workshops with these different people. All right, we are now opening a public hearing, Resolution 2022-17, a resolution amending the 2022 Cache County budget. All right. This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone that would like to address this issue?
Give us an
Okay, and Cameron, is someone going to give us an overview on this? Thank you.
It's not going to reach that way. All right, thank you. So this amendment is coming up, and here's the detail on that, for basically only a few reasons. And so I'll walk you through each one of those reasons and kind of relate it to each of the items that we have here. So as been discussed a little bit on tax levies and tax rates and tax revenues, this time of year we get our certified tax rate information from the state. So it's been worked on through the assessor's office and the recorder's office on, and being certified with the auditor's office to the state. And the state finally says, okay, here is your certified tax rate, and here's the revenue that that's going to produce. Because Cache County elected to abide by the certified tax rate process rather than do a tax increase for 2022, the state will say whatever revenue that produces is the revenue the county can have in their budget. So in our case, it means an increase to our tax revenue for 2022. So we had estimated to receive in the general fund, as you can see there, $15,230,000, and our certified tax rate will produce instead $15,575,000. So it gives us an adjustment of $345,000 in our general fund. Similarly, but in smaller amounts, in our health fund, an $8,000 increase adjustment, and then in our tax administration fund, $138,000 adjustment. Because each of those funds had appropriated some amount of fund balance to operate this year, this is proposing that the new tax revenues then offset the use of that fund balance. So instead of using fund balance, we can use the current revenue. So no expense changes, just recognizing revenue available to us through the certified tax rate process. The second item there is acquisition of capital assets. And I don't know how much discussion there's been on this item or not, but this was to enable the county to move quickly should opportunities arise. This is coming from our fund balance, but it's appropriating $4.5 million. We have a small amount for our Children's Justice Center on item 3. This is a grant actually provided by the state already. Are there questions already if you want to jump in?
Cameron, can you repeat number 2, because I got a little lost.
Okay, so that's where I said I was unclear on how much this had been discussed prior to this point or not.
I think you could go with 0.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I'm a little lost. If you would restate number 2, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. The county, as you know, has been interested in acquiring real property from the National Guard, the Armory by the fairgrounds. And a number of transactions have been discussed and sought after, but none have ever come to fruition. One of the reasons why that was the case is we were constantly in negotiations. So when a value would be discussed, the county didn't have funding in the budget to just move forward with that. As discussions went on, what do you call them? Appraisals would be increased, and so then the county needed more funding, so negotiations would continue. This here, while it could be used for that purpose, really can be used for other purposes, but it is to have a vehicle in place when the county is ready to make a motion that we could be able to acquire assets when they become available.
You've been here all evening, haven't you, Cameron?
Yes.
Did our auditor not just say there's no reason not to be reasonably detailed? And he said hundreds of thousands of dollars in miscellaneous seems appropriate. We blew through hundred thousands of dollars a long time ago to get to 4.5 million. But let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you for restating that, Cameron.
Item 3, small amount. This is actually a grant from the state for our Children's Justice Center. They have already awarded this grant. In fact, they want us to have it spent by Thursday. So we are kind of moving forward with that. I don't know if Terrell's still here or not. It looks like she's out right now. But this is putting it into our budget so that it's available. So both by revenue from the state and then into expense account for their use. After that, you've got a number of awards that were already approved by the council, RAPS tax awards and restaurant tax awards. These amendments here are simply transferring them from the respective funds, RAPS or restaurant tax funds, and moving it to the departments where those awards were given. So there's not really new spending in that sense. We're just moving it from the RAPS awards and the restaurant tax awards fund into the fund where they will be spent, into the departments where they'll be spent. And so that takes us actually to item number 15 on page 4. And these are project proposals that have come from the Budget Committee regarding the ARPA funding. So these are requests to use ARPA funding. In each one you can see it's labeled whether it's eligible, which means this is coming out of a pool of funds that is not the standard allowance. Standard allowance was $10 million and can be used for any of those purposes. If it's labeled eligible, that means it was qualified by other standards. Yes.
Hey, Cameron, I want to make a correction there from the Budget Committee yesterday. We did remove some of these things in a vote, but also some of them are just recommended for the council to consider, not necessarily that the Budget Committee is recommending that those dollars be spent. It's just, hey, council should look at this. It's a council decision. So I just want to make that clear to my fellow council members.
When was this updated? This
So
sheet?
I
This
was-
is not the sheet that was posted to or,
Is this not the one? So this was updated this morning after I got information from the committee meeting yesterday. I wasn't at the committee meeting yesterday, and so it was updated this morning.
I still have the old one printed out before.
I've got, yeah.
So
And I don't,
is
do you
this
know,
in our-
what's that? I emailed that to you and to David and to Dirk.
This is the one that's on your.
It's the new one.
What page is this that you got up there? Is that in our packet here?
So it should be. This is on page 4.
See, my page 4 doesn't show that at all.
No, it's under a different file.
A different file.
Yeah. You've got over here where it says supporting documentation, final.
I gotta go find it.
Supporting documentation, final. Right down there, 11C. Nope. Page 4. There's 6 pages in this particular file, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I got it, sorry.
So in the very initial one, there was a working list of ARPA requests, and that was discussed in the Budget Committee meeting yesterday, and a number of those were removed from what is being presented here. So initially, it presented the whole list that was the working list, and after that went through committee yesterday, a number of them were removed.
And for a verification from the Budget Committee meeting yesterday, we removed the admin campus expansion of over 5 million because we hadn't had a space needs analysis yet. So that was removed.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
We removed that previously from another budget opening.
Can I ask a question on that? Because it was in the, I mean, how did we arrive at that number before it even came to the Budget Committee? How does $5 million show up? How do we estimate that?
So that was an estimate based on 2 things. One, estimated what was being requested that was eligible. So we're looking at about that $15 million bucket. And then what has been used and what else was being proposed. It was kind of using up with the idea that a facility like that would use more than what was available in remainder.
You threw in extra, because before it was $3 million, so you threw in whatever was left over from the proposal to make it 5, am I?
Yeah, so that, yeah. So it became like a plug figure, essentially, like with the concept being that, again, a facility like that would use more funding than what was available or being shown available. So if projects then were cut out, then more was available for that project.
Thank you.
Okay. And those ARPA projects really take us through to the very end. There is the last two, number 22 and 23, are projects that would need to qualify from the allowance. But otherwise, I believe they were all eligible otherwise. And this amendment really started out with the idea of needing to make those amendments for the RAPS and restaurant tax awards to the county departments, and then being able to present these ARPA recommendations. Any other questions?
The senior center that got removed, did that go through the same process as the administrative campus in coming up with that dollar amount, the 7.5 million?
Actually, I was involved with the dollar amounts there, but no, it was not a plug figure. That was an amount that was requested.
Because it was in our capital improvement plan at $2 million last year. I just wondered how it went from 2 to 7.5.
Yeah. Our senior center director could probably answer that better, but that was an amount that was requested.
The budget committee asked to remove that so that the council could just maybe talk about it in a workshop or something, have a separate conversation as council members about those needs and if and what we want to do.
Do we have any public comment on any of this? None. Council members?
Make sure they're awake out there.
Yeah. Are you out?
Are we in line to close public hearing? I don't see anybody coming up to the mic.
There's not a
I
line.
move that we close public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, back to items of special interest. Fast Cops Grant, Sheriff Jensen, if you'll please come up and give us also an update on the impound facility.
And also explain where you were last time. You know where you were.
Well, probably at the impound facility last time.
We're
well-
not as popular as that other guy, so.
Well, I appreciate getting a few minutes. The Fast Cops grant we talked about, and I worked with the grant coordinator, and we looked at that pretty hard, but there's so many strings attached to that, and that I don't know was this worth the county investing that right now when it only pays for wages, but it left out equipment and benefits and a lot of things that the county would be ultimately on the hook for at the end of the grant period, which is 3 years. And the county would have to guarantee that those positions stay in place for at least a year following the grant. So I think without knowing more details on what that actual cost was going to be moving forward, we decided not to follow through with the Fast Cops grant. But with positions, since we're talking about that, is typically like we do, I have to do in the middle of the year, and I don't love doing this, and I know you guys don't like hearing this in the middle of the year, but we do our contracts with the cities and the school districts, and their budget years are July through June. So when we get contracts come due, they do bring mid-year discussions and talk about personnel. Through the contract piece this year, the school district would like to add another employee to another SRO to split between the 3 middle schools. What we've done with the contracts in the past with the school resource positions is the school district pays for half of a full-time position and the county pays for the other half, as they're not in the school as year-round. So we do get the benefit from the school resource when they're not in school and during the summer months. So that contract is coming open and for discussion. And it'll come up, I guess, in the budget opening in September. I just bring it to your attention now, so it's something to think about as we move forward that in a month or so. The other one that's came out too is with the other patrol contracts. I'm going to request another full-time patrol deputy for that, but that'll be paid for through the patrol contract in the cities and towns, and not a recommendation or a request from the from the county to fund that additional position. So I just give you that as a heads up that when the budget opening comes in September, those two things will be on the agenda for that. To bring you up to date on the impound facility, it's actually coming along very well. It's slower than I, again, would hope. And I'm going to take another rough guess at an opening date would be like October. Kira is going to be done with the construction piece, everything that they can do by July 18th. But there's things that they just can't get. We got a delivery date like the middle of August for the air conditioning units that need to go on the roof. The garage doors, for those who took the tour where the kennels are, we have a delivery date the end of August for those garage doors. Concrete right now is virtually impossible. They're doing the curb and gutter and the sidewalk with what cement they can get around the facility, so we don't have to wait for that. But they're literally getting like 20 yards, maybe 30 yards a week with concrete. So those pieces are just going to have to wait. I met with Kier today before we came here because we meet every week, and haven't told John this yet, but there's going to be a legal discussion that's going to come up because at some point we don't want to pay Kier $1,700 a day to sit down there at that facility waiting till the middle of August for the air conditioners to show up. So kind of the idea I floated past them today, and we need to look at it legally, is if their piece of it, what they can do is done July 18th, and I think we should make an amendment to the contract and have a punch list. So when we know that the air conditioning unit is going to be here, we pay Kier to come up for those time frames to install the air conditioners. We're not paying late fees or services for months waiting for the other pieces to get finished. The concrete to me is going to be, the air conditioner will come, the doors will come. At some point, concrete's going to be more available than it is right now. We purposely had Kier pour everything you can around the buildings, the sidewalks, the floors, the curb and gutter around the building. Have talked with Logan City because doing the curb and gutter out on the road, the sidewalk and curb and gutter, which by the plan and by the ordinances has to be there, that may come 15 feet at a time depending on concrete. And they could be pouring sidewalks next spring, and I don't want that to delay the opening, even if it's October, if everything else is completed other than curb and gutter and sidewalk. Logan City is willing to work with us on that, and if we want to work a deal with Kier to get a credit back on what the cost for this sidewalk and curb and gutter on the road is, Logan City is willing to help us with that and pour it as they can pour it, because they have the staff that could come pour 20 yards or 30 yards, whatever they're able to get at the time. But also work with Logan on getting a variance on our permit so we can open the facility even though we're probably not 100% compliant with what their ordinance are because of things that are out of our control. So Logan City's agreed, if that's a deal that we want to do with them, that they will do the curb and gutter and sidewalk. We'll just use the money that we had contracted with Kier to pay them to do that. But they're in a better position that they can pour little pieces than paying Kier to sit here waiting for 20 yards a week, which could be next spring before they actually get all the concrete put in. They're down to, they got painting in, the doors are up, the windows are up. They literally, they will be done by the 18th, other than the things they can't get. So I think it's come along great. It looks great. They've done a fantastic job inside, and if you took the tour, we'll do it again when there's actually more to go see again. Countertops are in, cabinets are in, floors are all but done. But given the dates that we've been given on receiving some of those things, I would like to say September 1st, but I would more say, if the delivery dates stay what they are, October 1st. There's things we could do to open it up earlier and just get poking at it, but I hate to have like 5 little grand openings or poke at it, or we can take 5 dogs today and 6 cats tomorrow, but nothing for a week after that. It's a great project. It's a great building. It's a great thing for the community, for Cache County specifically, and I think we should just do it one time and do it great and do it right.
Very good.
So unless the council has another direction they want me to go, that would be kind of the plan that I would like to look at, is let's do it right one time and have it be great.
Would there be any wisdom, Sheriff Nelson or Sheriff Jensen, to just put it in the spring when we know it'll for sure be complete. A lot of times
Yeah.
they'll operate things and whatnot, and then when they'll set a date in the future when they know everything's okay and do it.
Yeah, we could do that. And, you know, I think kind of the bonus that it's a government building and it's not a retail operation. Every day that it's not open, the county's not losing money. We're not losing sales because it doesn't open. Now, I know the cities who are all part of this. We've been part of our working groups on policies and ordinances. They're excited to get it open because, like us, is they're doing little contracts, short-term contracts to the housing of their animals like we are, waiting for this to open. We could open it.
I'm thinking along, maybe the rest of the council might agree with me, but I'm thinking along, we ought, as we have capacity, we ought to open it up for dogs and cats to the capacity that we're at.
Yeah.
And as a month goes by, we can increase the capacity. As 2 months go by, we pour more concrete, and 4 months goes by, we're getting near to almost filling up with dogs and cats. We haven't got any cement poured, but by spring, we got all the cement poured, we got the cats and dogs all in there. Let's have a grand opening, rather than half of it done, or not half of it, 5/8 of it done, and have grand opening, and then we still got, 3 or 4 parts that we still haven't done. Maybe we should just be patient and let it come in piece by piece and use it at the capacity that it has at that point. Is other council members think that we gotta set a date to open it long before it's even completed?
Yeah.
I don't know. How do we feel?
If we're ready by October, I'm excited to see it open in October.
I think that, and Councilman Zillis, I think, and I 100% agree with your statements, is the air conditioner is a big thing because it's 100 degrees outside. But as if we get to October and the air conditioner's out in, if we can get the doors on, like the kennel doors, that we can secure the facility and secure the animals, we could open it in the fall without the air conditioner. We won't need the air in October. But to say to push it now, even if we had the doors without the air, that wouldn't be a good circumstance. They'll have the parking lot poured. They'll have all the concrete around the building poured. And I'm confident that Logan's been great to work with so far, and I don't think they're going to hold us up on an occupancy permit because we don't have the frontage, it's curb and gutter and sidewalk. But I'm with you. We shouldn't piece it out. But when we can safely open that, if it's October, then it's October. If it's April, it's April. There's so many things that they're out of our control on getting things that I just don't know the answer.
If we can get permits from Logan City to start housing dogs and cats, and we keep increasing numbers, let's keep doing it, and we'll keep building it as we get materials, and when the time seems right, that it's completed enough to where we can have a decent grand opening, maybe we'll even have it at full capacity, dogs and cat, let's do it. But let's not set a August thing and be half cocked, and then decide October and still have one barrel cocked, but not the other one. Let's just wait till probably you tell us that, hey, it's now in a position where we can have a decent grand opening.
I'm 100% in agreement. Like I say,
Let's not set a date that we can't hit because we don't know.
yeah. But like I say, we know what the delivery dates are scheduled to be. They could tell us again, it could be November.
They can change them in one phone call and
Yep.
they've been changed.
Yep.
There's not a thing you can do about it.
Sheriff, I just want to say thanks for all your work on this. And also, the idea behind it is just such a great idea, and, working with the students and stuff, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. There's been a small working group, and we've invited the cities to be part of the policy and the fee schedules and the licensing and the revenue pieces of it. And it's been a great working group, and everybody's on board. I think that the next step over the winter will be look at what we can do as countywide ordinances. And every ordinances aren't going to fit every community. How many animals require a kennel license in Cove is going to be different than what it wants to be in Providence. We don't need to get every ordinance, but if we can get, generally speaking, 90% of the ordinances that are across the board the same in every community, that would be such a huge help to the cities, to the county, to all those who are doing animal control services, that it's the same really minus a few minute details that are pretty city and town specific.
Madam Chair, I'm not so sure it wouldn't be a good idea to let Sheriff Jensen talk to the joint meeting of Logan City and Cache County and give them an update on the animal control.
Okay.
They'd probably like to hear where we're at with that.
Yeah.
And anticipate.
Okay, I like that idea.
It wouldn't take long to give a little report and tell them that we're having trouble with doors and locks and sidewalks and air conditioners, and they'd like to hear that. They'd like to hear where we're at.
That meeting is July 21st, Chad,
Okay.
at 5:30.
What's that? I got one, okay. Yeah, I'll plan on that. That'd be great.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns for Sheriff Jensen?
Just a big thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's good. No, I just really want to give an update and not to surprise anybody when we look about personnel stuff
You still
at the
got
next, but,
pages there you haven't read off.
oh, that's notes about probation and that's notes about courts and that's a lot of stuff.
I do have a little bit of a question for you. I know there's been talk about the receiving center and different things like that. Do you have any updates or any feelings on that, Sheriff?
I've said in the past, I 100%, 1,000% support having a receiving center with Better River Mental Health, doing what they've been doing. Being in the legislature the last couple of years, I've seen this progress, and I've seen what the thoughts are behind it. Not the Sheriff Sparks in Davis County did the receiving center, but it is at he had a building on his site. I've talked to him several times. I've toured his facility several times, and it's a huge impact and a positive impact for law enforcement. We have Bear River Mental Health, I think, who's been looking at this for a couple of years and pushing hard to get one in Cache County. And as of last session, I think as far as the state funding level goes, we are in the top 1 or 2 to get the next receiving center in the valley. Beth has worked her tail off on getting that thing put together. But, I mean, they run into struggles like the rest of us do. It's staffing issues across the board for everything. I mean, I know they struggle with hiring psychiatrists and therapists and social workers and all the things like every other service-oriented public safety type organization is going through right now. But I would fully support a receiving center working with Bear River Mental Health, and what law enforcement could do to assist that. We would be very much behind that.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. You're great. All right, very good. Kathleen, thank you for being here. This is,
I'm just about asleep.
By the way, Kathleen, you are allowed to retire when we get the last 15 feet of concrete.
All right.
So, Sheriff.
Well, I'm just
hold off
disappointed
that
to
last
know that the
15
senior centers come off the list. I was looking forward to that. All right, we are going to start out today with a little video. Ooh, wowie.
Don't talk into
Hey.
Here, Annette. Come on.
Yeah, am I ever?
Every county government office in Utah is unique because all are run by elected officials chosen by their community. Each has an important job and function as they work together to provide citizens with a variety of useful services. Let's visit the county assessor's office to see what they do. The assessor has the very important job of calculating the fair market value of every property within their county. This includes land and buildings, known as real property. But county assessors also compute values for other kinds of property, known as personal property. Personal property includes business furnishings and equipment, motor vehicles, and manufactured homes. It sounds simple enough, but establishing a value that is both fair and accurate isn't easy, because no two properties are exactly alike. In fact, county assessors complete special training and are required to be licensed to do their job. Imagine you and 2 friends go out to dinner. One of your friends orders a hamburger, another orders lobster, and you order a salad. The final bill comes to $50. To pay for the meal, it would be easiest for the waiter to divide up the total 3 ways. However, it wouldn't be fair to you because the value of the lobster is much greater than salad or even a hamburger. County assessors don't tell property owners how much they owe for property tax, but like a good waiter at a restaurant, it's the assessor's job to make sure everyone is given a fair value for their unique property. To do that, they use lots of tools to compare the similarities and differences of each property. These include maps and measurements, real estate sales information, and even aerial photography. These proven methods and techniques ensure that every property is assessed a fair and accurate value. Assessors frequently reevaluate property assessments because of the ups and downs of the market and changes to the properties themselves. For example, values tend to increase when there are greater numbers of buyers in the market or when the owner of a property decides to make improvements, such as remodeling, additions, or finishing their basement. Once values are established, they're multiplied by the local tax rate, which is set by local governing authorities, such as county legislative bodies, city councils, school boards, and special service district boards. Notices disclosing the assessed value, as well as tax rates, are sent to real property owners in July and personal property owners at different times during the year. If the real property owner disagrees with the value of their property, they can file an appeal by September 15th each year, further ensuring the process is accurate and fair for everyone. Assessors are just one important office at your county. Without their training, expertise, and hard work, fairness and accuracy in property values would be impossible to achieve. Counties are a key part of every community, uniting local people with solutions to meet local needs. We're the Utah Association of Counties, the unifying voice for county government.
All righty. Still echoing. Does it stop eventually? Now. All right. I just want you to know that assessor was me when I started. That's what I looked like. I'm just kidding. But anyway, it was a long time ago. As you can see by that little example, the county assessor does not, in capital letters, set the tax amount. That is absolutely a misnomer, and I've tried my whole career to help people to understand that. That clearly is difficult to understand. It is our responsibility to determine the value. That is all my job does, is determine that value. And it's important, but that's what I'm responsible for. I'll be the first to admit that the tax system in Utah is complicated. It's difficult for people to understand, and when we think we're telling them and we're hoping they understand it, pretty soon we find out that we've lost them somewhere along the line, or they're not believing, based on their own personal experience, what we're saying. And that's oftentimes the case. Let's start with talking about the unprecedented times that we are living in right now. I go home at night, and if I turn on the television, there has not been one night, I don't believe, that there hasn't been a story on the news, and I don't care which channel you pick, can even be national, where they're not talking about market values, rising house prices, rents rising, not enough housing for people. It's every single day. Now, if you think back in time, has it always been that way? I've been at this for lots of years. I came here to the county 46 years ago. And I can tell you, in that time frame, we've had 1 or 2 or 3 times where values dipped. We came to a little bubble. We saw a little bit of a recession, and we rode the wave. And in Cache County, our history has been that the taxes just go on or the value, excuse me, that's how I confuse you. The value just kind of goes like this. We never see this, we never see this. At least we haven't in my years here in Cache County. We just saw gradual little, and we made it through those bubbles. So when house prices go up, I want you to think about what happens to your property tax. Now, in your mind, you might say, well, my house value went up, so my taxes went up. I think that's probably what we all think. Let me share with you a real experience, a real life story. In 1981, my husband and I built our first home in Hyde Park. It was a beautiful brick home, roughly 4,200 square feet. We bought the building lot at that time for $11,500. $11,500. In 1984, so just 3 years later, we sold the home for $144,000, roughly what it cost us to build the home. The property taxes on the home at the time we sold it, this was back in 84, was $1,033.86. Today, that home is 41 years old. We do not own it. We've sold it, so I'm not. Home's 41 years old, and the county has the market value of that home at $605,000. $605,000. The property taxes on that home today are roughly $2,700. I don't have an exact amount because I don't have the current rate, but roughly $2,700. So if you think about that home in particular, in those 41 years, the home value has gone up 320%. The tax, the property tax, has increased 161%. Now, why didn't they go up at the same rate? If I raised the value, why didn't the tax go up at the same rate? That's what people think happens. My taxes went up. Is it commensurate with the value? No, that's because of the Truth in Taxation Law. The Truth in Taxation Law says whatever your budget was, Cache County or the city or the school district, whatever you received last year, you're guaranteed to get this year unless you go through a truth in taxation, a property tax increase hearing, and you let your citizens know we're going to raise the tax. Otherwise, even with my value going up, my tax would have stayed the very same at $1,033, because that's what you're guaranteed. So how did I get to 161%? Taxing entities along the way they raised their rate. So even if the value is increasing, the rate is floating up as well. Whenever the assessor raises value, and I'm talking in total, whenever we raise value, the rate automatically drops so that you're only receiving the same amount of money you got the year before. Now, what happens? We were talking about earlier commercial property. Commercial property has not been climbing in value at the same rate that homes have climbed. You heard them talking on the news about the increase in commercial value? No, when COVID hit, we didn't know what was going to happen. What we saw from COVID was it spurred a market that we didn't know existed. Pretty soon people were working from home. They could move from Ohio because they went to Utah State University and I want to relocate back in Cache Valley. And they came here and pretty soon housing prices started to go up. We saw this flurry in the market, not just here, but across the nation. It caused a different thing, but what did we see with commercial businesses? We saw businesses in some ways stagnate. Not all, but many, because number one, they were trying to keep their doors open. They had to close everything down. They were trying to do drive-thrus at McDonald's instead of having an open lobby. All of those things caused the commercial property values to stay about the same. We didn't see the same kind of increases. So what happens is we raise this value, rates drop, so it shifted the tax burden from commercial properties to residential properties and away from commercial. So commercial properties saw a decrease in tax, while residential properties may have still seen an increase. So when I tell them, well, the rate drops, it's like, you're lying to me. My taxes went up. I just know you're lying. Then I have to show them businesses who saw a $25,000 decrease last year in taxes. It's a real thing. So we know how the system works, but that's how my home in Hyde Park went up in value 320%, and taxes went up 161%. If you think about any values, they're not static. They don't just stay the same. Over 41 years, I don't know, what does it cost you to go to a movie now? The cost of a vehicle, the cost for food, the cost for a gallon of gas. Everything, a year and a half. Yeah, I actually looked up to see in '81 what gas cost. It was $1.16 a gallon, just in case you wondered. Yeah, it was a little bit less. So you can see things change. And for the most part, with these few little bubbles I talked about since I came here to the county, and really history shows us this everywhere, house prices tend to appreciate. Real estate prices tend to appreciate. What my mom and dad paid 60 years ago for a home in Providence, $3,000, is not still at $3,000. It just isn't. So for the most part, those things appreciate. We see little bumps when we see decreases, but for the most part, little by little, those values climb. Now, I brought a little, you can pass those around, a little packet for everybody, and I'll wait maybe until you get them. The top article there, you will see, is a KSL story. This was just on the news a week ago. And in that story, they did a pretty good job. Again, they didn't try to go into explaining the tax system because it's extremely difficult. But what I did want to bring out, and this is really tiny print, is that they interviewed Chief Deputy from Utah County and also the Salt Lake County Assessor. Utah County reported that in the last year, from 21 to 22, single-family residential properties went up, the median price, about 35% over last year. They saw a 35% increase. Salt Lake County, and they say, they're in the fourth line, in years 2012 to 2020, they were seeing about a 10% increase each year. So from 2010 to 2020, we were seeing about a 10% increase each year, and then boom, all of a sudden, we go up 35. Salt Lake County reported something very similar. They said the median increase for 22 in Salt Lake County was 29%. With their properties, it says, for comparison, Stavros said last year's increase on residential properties was 11.7. He found that it was something similar in those back years. So I began to wonder, well, what's Cache County's? What's happened to us? So I had IT run me some numbers, and Todd's awesome, and he ran me some numbers. And I will share with you what those numbers are. I had him look at all homes countywide. Countywide. What did my residential property values do from 21 to 22? Our median increase was 32%. Isn't that amazing? Salt Lake County, or Utah County, was 35. Salt Lake County was 29.7. We were 32. Last year, our reappraisal area, and I'm going to talk more about this so that we all understand what I'm talking about, but the area that we looked closer at, we reviewed the property characteristics, were homes built from 2006 to 2021. The increase on those properties went up the most. They went up, the median increase was 46%. They saw a bigger increase. We'll talk about why. All homes built prior to 2006, we factored. We do a statistical analysis based on sales ratio. We time adjust the sales so that we're getting to the January 1st lien date. And then we had to factor based on year built, because that's how we do reappraisal here, to come up with statistically what that market would be. And that increase was 27%. So that kind of gives you an idea as to what happened to us last year. All right, the second sheet in your little packet you will see is blue. On that sheet, let me tell you a little bit about what happens. And Sean referred to this earlier. And this is something I'm really going to try hard to help everybody understand. A statement was made that the assessment is done every 5 years. False.
Sean lied.
I'm helping Sean to understand this too. Everybody says that, but it should only go up once every 5 years because you only look at it once every 5 years. That is not a true statement. State law requires that the assessor value every property to market value every year. So in a market that's going up 10% every year, what should you see your value doing? Should be going up every year at 10%. That's what you should see happening. You should see an increase in your value every single year.
You've done good on my house with that.
I try hard. All my friends, I try really hard. The area that's done every 5 years is what's called review of property characteristics. Has nothing to do with valuation. It has to do with reviewing the property characteristics. And we're responsible to go out and physically look at, we don't go inside of homes, nor would you want us to, but we go out there and we look at the physical characteristics and we say, wow, this home looks like it's been completely remodeled and there's a big addition on the side that we never got a permit on. We're taking a picture, we're looking at the physical characteristics, and we're making a more in-depth review of their value when we're valuing it. So we're valuing an individual home versus doing a statistical analysis of a whole group. That's why you saw those property values going up more. It might be that some of those homes were newer homes that at the time we did the appraisal and the initial inspection, the basement wasn't finished. But today it is. So did the value go up for that reason? Yeah, probably. That's why we see larger increases. Also, I think it's wise to remember that everything doesn't go up at the same amount and the same percentage. Some homes, condos, townhouses, if any of you own any of those, you must know what's happened to the value. It's because of the price range, supply and demand. It's in a price range that a lot of people can qualify and buy versus the house that's $3 million. Did they go up at the same percentage? No, they're going to go up at a different amount. So everything is doing this. We're shifting that tax burden based on percents that it go up. So on the blue page, I'm required each year to do two documents that I have to send to the tax commission. This is the last page of what is called my 5-year plan. I have to have a plan that I'm telling the tax commission I intend to value every property in my county within the 5-year time frame. And these are the ones I'm going to do each year. So I break it down and I give them an outline as to what I'm going to do. Do I have to follow that exactly? No, it's a guide. But I do have to visit every property once every 5 years. That's something they audit me on. They want to know that I've gone out and reviewed property characteristics. So I break it down and you can see in each of those years what happens. Now, I can change that document. For instance, we saw multifamily residential buildings going up really fast last year. They were hot, hot, hot. They were going through the roof. We had to up them. We had to go back and do the review of property characteristics and reappraise them individually. So we had to put that back into our schedule. And so they got done more than once in that 5 years, the actual review. So this just gives you an idea as to what the review was. So for 2022, what did the assessor's office review? We reviewed all homes, as I said, built from 2006 to 2021, approximately 8,431 of them. We reviewed all of the land in books 5, 10, 10, and 11. 5, 6, 10, and 11. 5 and 6 is Logan City. for the most part. 10 and 11 is Wellsville-Mendon area. So geographically, we do that. We reviewed properties in Scare Canyon and the Hideout cabins, and we did commercial properties on the east side of Logan, which we call Region 6. So we have to have a plan, and the Tax Commission does an audit to make sure we're following our plan and that we are reviewing property characteristics of all properties. But again, remember, we have to value properties every year. So while they weren't receiving a review, we were doing a statistical analysis to determine what our increases would be. Now, where does all this confusion come from? I happened to receive a copy of a newsletter that was put together by a city here. And I don't need to say who or what, but let me read a couple things that were in that newsletter so you can see where the confusion comes. I'm quoting exactly from that newsletter. It said, while Cache County is only scheduled to do property tax assessments / appraisals for portions of each city in the county every 5 years, this particular city has experienced large statistical home valuation increases each year in capital letters for the past 4 years from Cache County. From 2021 to 2022, the county did another assessment and increased the average home value in this particular city. So where's the confusion in that? Number one, they're implying that I only do it for a portion of the city once every 5 years. Not true. I value properties every year. That's why they saw increases every year. Property values were going up. If they understood that, they would understand why values have been increasing all these years. That's why their value's going up. Now then they say, and then they did another assessment. Sounds like I added something new. No, that was the review of property characteristics on that segment of homes that were built 2006 to 2021. Another place in their article, it said flaw. They believed that this is a flaw in the property tax policy. Cache County indicated their hands are tied by the Utah state tax laws and that they are required by law to appraise home values within 5% of the market value of the home. Nowhere does it say 5%. We have to appraise at market value. Market value is market value. I don't know where 5% came from, but it is market value. So that's incorrect. They further noted that the only avenue for citizens to challenge their tax liability is to contest their property appraisal with the county. So there again, confusion. You don't contest a tax amount to me or to the Board of Equalization. They are appealing the value if they believe the value the assessor has set isn't correct. We know, all of you who serve on the board, we do nothing with taxes, right? And the last sentence, they noted, however, that the county is typically reluctant to allow a decrease of an appraised property value. That's interesting. Are you reluctant? You folks are the ones who lower them or change them. I wouldn't say we're reluctant. I would say we're trying to arrive at fair market value. Whatever it is, it is. And if we're wrong, we want it right. We're never reluctant. But do we just change values based on someone's ability to pay the tax? No. That never enters into what we're doing. So that's why what their tax liability isn't something the Board of Equalization worries about. And quite frankly, percentage-wise, there isn't a high percentage of changes at the Board of Equalization. That's because we've worked with a lot of people who've come in concerned about their value long before they ever file an appeal. We're sitting down with them, sharing with them sales and what's happening in the market and showing them properties that are selling in their area. And then pretty soon they say, I had no idea that my value seems fair. They may not like their tax bill. They may not even like the value we have. But they come to realize that we're trying to be fair and equitable with all taxpayers because that's what our job is. So I wouldn't call it reluctant. I think we're trying to do our job. All righty, let's see here. So what did we do in 2022? First of all, we did a review of property characteristics of the properties that I just highlighted. On the green page, it gives you an idea as to what we did. These were the rules that we determined, not just me, but that we determined through doing the statistical analysis, and I'm not going to go through each one of them. If you have a question on it, feel free to call me. But all property values, even commercial, received some increase in value this year. Commercials was small, it was 5% of the building value only. So, but most all properties received some increase. So I think that's important to understand. Oh, I can tell you what's happening to personal property. The legislature, okay, the legislature doesn't like personal property for whatever reason, and I think it's an economic thing. They just continue to change those laws, and quite frankly, you talk about the taxes being a three-legged stool. That third leg, which is the personal property leg, is just about cut in half now. So we are going to have a tipping stool here any day. It's already tipping. There are now businesses coming up whose value is less than $25,000 are exempt, and beginning next year, they only have to file once, and if they're exempt, they never file again. They never file again. Which, interestingly enough, when we did our analysis of all of it, we actually told the legislature that it takes a business in a startup about 5 years. They'll buy a little bit of equipment, then they'll buy a little bit of equipment, then they'll buy, and that's what happens. The business grows. It's either out of business or it grows. And typically our experience is it takes at least 5 years to get to that maximum. Then they start just turning over what equipment they had before. Well, the legislature chose to go a different path, and we saw what happened. So that's a whole nother story for another day. I just wanted to share with you one thing quickly. Every day we track sales, every day. So here we've just done this big reappraisal, and we've done the review of property characteristics, and we've raised values this year like we've never done before in all of my years. And these sales come across my desk every day. And I just happened to thumb through them. So these are sales of properties, residential properties, that have just happened in the last 2 weeks. Let me tell you what % I am of value. This home, built in 2007, I'm sitting at 85% of what it sold for. This home, I'm sitting at 71% of what it sold for. This home, 89% of what it sold for. This home, 89% of what it sold for. 89%, 71%, 86%, 84%, 83%. These are sales that they'll be using to measure the market for next year. So guess what's going to happen? The market is slowing. I'm not a predictor of markets, but this gives you an indication of where we are still in this market.
So in essence, what we're to understand is if the property value is going down, the property tax will go up.
If things reverse, is that what you're referring to? No?
You always preach that when property values go up, the tax rate goes down.
Correct.
Now, you just read to us about 7 sales there in the last little bit, that all the property values are, instead of going up, they are actually softening.
No. They're going up. My value, after just reappraising them, this first home, I say it's worth $825,900. It sold for $1 million. No. My value is at that percent.
It sold for more.
Yes.
No, that's not. That's your home. Isn't that in?
Yeah, that was Dave's. The second one was yours. We're at 71% on yours. No, but you just have to know what's happening. So what's going to happen next year is values are going to go up again.
Kathleen, tell what it was last year, so they can see what the factor was on that 800,000.
Well, this particular one was an increase. So if we use, this one was reappraised. So this was one of our, we took a closer look at and raised it to 825. I don't know what the value was the year before, but based on the percentages that IT tells me, the median was a 46% increase. Don't know if this one was, but that's what's happening in the market.
You're a bearer of so much good news.
I know. I was thinking this was kind of fun, actually. I thought it was better than some other stuff. I won't say anything, but
She's not the bearer of good news, she is the bearer of news. She is only just telling us what it is. Now, you're the judge as to
Yep.
what I said.
you know what? It's all good. It's all good. It really is. I just think it's, half empty or half full. I think we live in a robust time, well, some things. This is awesome. And I think everybody hopes that their value goes up at some point in time, especially if you're selling. That part's good. I just want you to know that we're doing our best. We're doing our best to treat everybody equally and fairly. Are we always right? No. Those are the ones we want to fix at Board of Equalization, because there are always things about properties we don't know. But we're trying our very hardest. We've seen unprecedented new growth. We don't have cement. That's what's happening everywhere. But we're building as fast as we can go. So we're raising, we've got new growth that we're having to measure and appraise, along with keeping up with the values on other properties. The one thing I really want to come out of this is that you all know we have to value properties every year. If values are going up, expect that yours will too. That's what's going to happen.
So when you hear that there's a state law that your appraised value or your value has to be within so much, what is that, or is it a rule or a law?
It is not. Let me tell you what it does come down to. In the area, in the area that I reappraise or I review the property characteristics, so homes built from 2006 to 2021, those homes that I've taken a closer look at have to be within 5% high or low of that 100%. So I have to be between 95% and 105% of what the property sells for. If I'm not, the state takes original jurisdiction and they bring me, Cache County, to 100%. That is the only time they measure that.
So that's that
State-
once every 5-year deal then, right?
But it's a segment of our population, but it's just those homes that are the 5%. Everything else is required to be at 100%. While I'm doing a sales ratio and tracking these sales and knowing what percent I am, the state is doing the same thing. And they're in my office measuring how close I am to market value. If I don't factor and fix those values, coming up with a statistically 100% market, and I can show you my sales ratio, that's where I'm at, then they will bring it up there. So either I do it, that's the job I've taken oath of office to do, or they will do it. I'd prefer to do my job. So I think that's the important thing to watch. So when we talk about what percent we are, that's what they're watching, is the sales ratio. Any other questions? Have I lost you completely?
No, that was very good
Good.
information.
I got one up there.
Yes.
I compliment Kathleen from other other assessors, because other assessors will go a geographic area. Tell a 1970s home comparison versus a 2012 one. I think you need to tell them. It's a very huge strength that Kathleen does that other assessors do not do. So we have this advantage.
We're going to miss Kathleen greatly in the county.
This is,
Yes.
when the law first changed to, first they called it reappraisal, then they called it review. I was the assessor at the time, and I made a decision that the best way to do it and really have consistency, have all of my appraisers thinking of one mind, that's the difficulty is keeping equitability between all of these values, was to do it based on year build. if they're going into a neighborhood geographically, we're going to go into Providence, and here's my mom and dad's house that was a log cabin built in 1890. Right next to it is my sister's house that was built in 2003. Right next to that is something else. Then my appraisers are continually having to determine effective age, what's the value of that home, pull comps for those kinds of homes. Whereas if we do it based on year built and we do it county-wide, first of all, everybody across the whole county, not just one geographic area, is seeing some change in the value. Secondly, when you're appraising homes built in the 70s, we all know what they look like. It's pretty easy. We can get pretty close to what we believe that home can sell for, because we're doing 170 home right after the next. It's almost a cookie cutter. We know what's happening. When we get to homes in today's market, they're more custom homes. We know the fixtures and the amenities those homes are going to have. Basketball courts, theater rooms. Well, did they have those in the 70s? No, didn't have to worry about them. That's in today's market. So as my people go through, and I'm the only county in the state who does it this way, but I can tell you it makes a huge difference in my sales ratio. They've had me do several presentations with the assessors. It's just difficult to all of a sudden jump over to that. But when we very first started, we believed that was the best way to appraise equitably and do the best job we could. So that's the only downside, I will tell you, is that you can have one home that's built in 2006 that saw a 46% increase this year. And the one next door got a 26% increase because it was built in 1895. That's the only downside. But at least we know all of those homes were pretty close on where those values are, because those are the sales we're tracking and coming up with our guidelines.
All right, well, thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah.
The other thing that Kathleen does, is she does land.
Do land. We need to move on.
So that it's not this huge spike. So she may appraise a home and a land at a different time.
Right.
That makes that curve, instead of so straight, it gives the taxpayer that slope, which is, again, another nice.
You'll see on the 5-year plan, I'm doing land at a different time. So last year I did 10 and 11, for instance. Well, land was all done out there. It doesn't mean your home was done too, but your home might have fallen into that 2000. So then you saw both. You saw both at the same time. But that gives us a chance to look at the properties more than once every 5 years and try to keep up so that they don't see these big jumps. In today's market, there's big jumps. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to avoid it. I didn't make the market, and I'm not buying all the houses and selling them all. So I did not do it, and so I can't fix that problem.
Kathleen, we just want to tell you how much we appreciate you. You are awesome.
Well,
and we'll miss you very much. And thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for staying.
Oh, you're welcome.
I do want to make a point, though. There was a study that Mr. Zook had people do as far as the home crisis, and it was referenced that the councils need to do some changes on zoning. We can't control all of that because the market is dictating the prices on this. And so, and then that report came out to the Cass Chamber of Commerce that said the councils are timid in their rules. That doesn't all fall on government for what's going on in the market, is what I believe as to that report.
Good deal. All right. Moving on. Terrell. Did Terrell?
Terrell texted me and she had.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a question for everybody. Mine and Nolan's speakers mics are flashing reds and yellow.
Means we gotta go
and
home.
reds.
They're out of battery juice.
Some other people are still green.
I'll give you mine.
You're out of batteries, but that means you can talk and it won't be
Apparently,
picked up.
we won't be picked up.
Say some good stuff.
Say about what we want.
I don't think the microphones ever stop you from saying what you want.
You start speaking to keep you out of the paper.
It censors me.
Oh, we want donuts. How do we say that stuff?
All right. Okay, moving on. 11A, Ordinance 2022-18, an ordinance amending Section 8.04 of the Cache County Code regarding food service to update the referenced Utah Code section. Yeah, I was gonna say, I looked over there, but John was gone. Okay.
This agenda just keeps getting more exciting.
Okay. Yeah.
If you look at the red line page on this, it's the easiest. It's the last of the 3 pages on this. Subsection A of food service. If you read down partway through, talks about food service in Cache County, that enforcement would be regulated in accordance with the unabridged form of the 1962 edition of the United States Public Health Service Food Service Sanitation Ordinance and Code. The FDA puts out kind of model ordinances and codes, and they still do it, so that if a jurisdiction needs a new code or doesn't have a code, you could go to the model one and maybe adopt that. That's what we did in 1972. Before the state was regulating food service, the county passed this ordinance to regulate food service by adopting the 1962 FDA model code. In the 80s, the state started regulating it. We never changed our code. So this ordinance is to update us so that we're not still trying to regulate under something that wouldn't apply because the state's already regulating. The new subsection A says we're going to regulate food service in Cache County according to state code, and then that the Bear River Health Department will take care of that. You'll see that we're omitting 8.04.020 about milk products. Again, that adopted an ordinance that back in 1972 that no longer is applicable. So we're removing that. That's the purpose of this, is just to bring the code up current. Now, I've had ample time to kind of double check everything tonight, and I am not, as I sit here, confident that we've fully captured the field of what we ought to be pointing to in the state code. So since this is just for initial consideration tonight, I'd ask that we put it on next time for a vote so I can just do a little more double checking on what we're pointing to, but that's the gist of this ordinance, and it should just be ready for a vote next time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we need to do anything on, okay, thanks. Okay, very good. All right, ordinance 2022-19 and ordinance amending section 2.12.230 of the Cache County Code regarding closed meetings to update the referenced Utah Code section.
This is kind of similar, and I'd invite you again to look at page 3, the red line version. Subsection B that says no closed meeting is allowed except as to matters exempted from open meetings under Utah Code. Section previously said 52-4-5, as it currently exists or may hereinafter be modified. It has been renumbered, and so we're just inserting that the state code that we're referring to is now 52-4-205, and adding subsection E. This county code kind of takes highlights from the state code on closed meetings and says, and our county rules for closed meetings are the same as the state, A, B, C, D, and E. State code has more than what's in here, and we're just kind of repeating the highlights. My suggestion long-term would be that we might ought to just revisit some of these, and we may not need a county ordinance on closed meetings that just tries to keep up with state code when all we're doing is restating state code in our county ordinance. But for now, this would update us to be current and more complete in echoing state code. That one is ready for your passage if you want.
I have a question on this.
Yeah.
So under state code, if you close a public, or you go into an executive session for those specifics listed, which we know are like character, security devices, that type of stuff, right? It also allows you that you can keep detailed written minutes. It says shall make a recording of the closed portion of the meeting and B, may keep detailed written minutes that disclose the content of the closed portion of the meeting. I'm curious if what you have written there that makes it shall do a recording, that doesn't allow us to ever choose to keep the detailed written minutes of a closed session.
Yeah, the number one, state code is going to trump. So that's why I say I'm not sure that we even need this section, because we're going to have to follow state code regardless of what this says. But to the extent that we want to say in county code, try to say we're following the state code, this does not prohibit written minutes.
So if
It says it likes the state.
And we say shall, that doesn't preclude us from doing it.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, because this amendment to the county code says that we shall make a recording.
But it doesn't say that we also may keep.
But it doesn't prohibit it, and that's what I'm saying. What this says is we are going to make a recording as required. And we're staying silent on written minutes, and state code says you may do them, so we certainly may do them. You're not saying anything about written minutes, and state code says you may do it, so you may do it.
Okay, thank you for answering that question.
All right.
We're in a position, John, where we could act upon this tonight.
You are if you waive the rules.
Okay. Any motions?
Madam Chair, I would like to waive the rules and pass ordinance 2022-19 about closed meetings was presented to us.
Have a motion? Any second? No seconds? Okay, I guess we'll wait on it then. No, it doesn't go.
Why does nobody want to do that?
Yeah, any comments on it?
Want to look at it a little closer?
Okay, so we'll vote, we'll save that for the next meeting.
Are there any questions in that regard?
John, I'm going to give you this, and just so you know what I was, in case maybe you say, oh, wait, not that you would.
Okay, very good. All right, moving.
Do you know what, okay. What I'm talking about, okay.
That wasn't clear, but happy to talk about it.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, this would not be.
Okay, thanks, John.
Okay, moving on to 11C, Resolution 2022-17, a resolution amending the 2022 Cache County budget. Cameron, do we need anybody to address us on this? We had discussion earlier on it. Any comments?
I have some comments. I'm really concerned about some of the things that we've seen in this budget. Some of them got moved out, but they're millions and millions of dollars in a budget opening, which gives me heartburn because I think we should do them in a regular budget and so we can compare with the other things we have going on. And with what Kathleen has been telling us and what we foresee with inflation, with property values, with the possible recession, I'm really concerned about spending millions of dollars. And I would really think it would be wise for the council to come up with a list of priorities of where we want to use this ARPA money, use it for what we want to use it for, before we make any more decisions, and not let it burn a hole in our pocket. I think we should be really careful.
Any other comments?
I guess the comment I might have, is there any request for this budget that has already been being spent without approval that needs to move forward? I don't know.
I don't know.
I would say the request from the clerk's office for the election building, he mentioned to me yesterday that he had moved forward with that and needs those funds.
Is that for the airport?
Yes, for the airport building.
And that's what I do have a question on that because, and forgive me, maybe I'm just not remembering that. when we sent him over there, that he didn't already have that in his budget? That wasn't communicated to
He
us.
said he had that in his budget, he was okay.
That's what I thought.
Everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, a 61.5 popped up, and I'm going,
We already gave him $52,000 last
Yeah.
time. So that's a concern I have as well, is
Yeah,
where's
but
this money going?
did he have that building, I want to use the word given to him, but had the opportunity to go ahead and get it ready for the election equipment and all that? Did he have all that when he said that he had the money to cover it before he really knew he had the building? He visited with me, and he was saying, hey, I got a bunch of these bills that I can cover, but not all of them. And he said a lot of them was paint, you know, just things getting it ready so that he could use it. And one of the main things, he said it had to have decent locks on it, and those type of things. And I don't know. It appears to me that we should, if he's went ahead and done what we told him he could do and what he said he'd do, and he ran over budget, I'm not exactly sure where he's going to come up with this money. Is that what we're concerned of?
Well, we approved 52,000 for safety, you know, for the elections, so that was probably for his locks and
Probably.
all
Yeah,
of that
that's
good
really
stuff.
That's really broad, it can be a lot of things.
Yeah. But as far as the other goes, I think we need to take a look at that and see if, you know, what he did have in his budget at the time. If he says he had it to cover it. Any, Cameron, do you have any insight into any of that?
You know, I don't have additional insight on that facility. I remember hearing a lot of talk about it, but this is just presented as a request as it was submitted. I don't have additional insight or anything to shed light on that with.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think we should ask Jess to come and you know, share with us what expenses he does have?
Yeah.
And what additional that he had went from the previous time that we approved?
Yeah, we did talk in Budget Committee that we did want him to come in and talk to us about the voter information inserts in education, but of course tonight's a bad night for him, yeah.
There's no way he could come, he thinks.
Yeah, we realize that, so,
He said that he would be swamped, you know.
yeah.
In a day or two.
You know, this is a perfect example of why I've been asking for us to get access to the Cassell system. Because we could all be sitting here right now, pull it right up, and know today. And state code, I just want to share this in a public setting for folks that are trying to slow walk that request and make it hard for this council to see our budget information. That state code says, any other statements of operations or reports on financial conditions as the governing body may require. That's any reporting, any statements. Any is not a limiting word. It's all encompassing. So we should be able to see that information rather than waiting 5 days for any of our requests to be responded to. Because each request that I've made to the finance department has been intercepted by the chief deputy executive, and 5 days goes by before I'm responded to. Each time. And so we're flying blind here when the technology is available. Executive Zook, you've said you're a transparent and you're an open book. Why do we not have access to that system?
I believe you already received the answer to that, but.
No, we haven't.
Repeat it. When you requested access to that system, Mr. Jensen came and spoke with Mr. Anderson, expressed his concerns about it. They expressed their concerns to me and suggested that they
What day was that done?
I don't remember what day.
June 2nd.
I agreed with them that that would be a good idea to get a legal opinion to find out what the requirements would be. They spoke with Mr. Luthi, and he agreed that it was something that should be researched, could be researched, and that he would issue us an opinion.
June 28th?
I have not completed my opinion on that.
Okay. So your request that you're transparent and you'll be willing to share any information that we requested, actually you asked for a legal opinion rather than sharing that information?
Well, I'll just be open with you and direct about my concerns. Cameron and other staff have different concerns, but I guess this is one of the concerns too. One of the concerns is related to what our auditor referred to earlier today, and it's about creating an environment where everyone feels like there's a safe environment for people to discuss financial matters without being attacked.
Nobody's being attacked here.
And I'll tell you that that's my concern, is that the reason for being interested in this information is to find information that could be used to make accusations, that could be used as a political weapon against staff or elected officials.
When has that ever happened?
Well, so how about this? Would the council be willing to make a commitment that that would not happen?
You know what, I think that the transparency needs to be there, and I brought this up because this was brought up when we talked about SB 162, and the state auditor himself said that we should be able to have access to that. In fact, if the council wanted to, we could probably make an ordinance that those reports that are sent to the state auditor's office quarterly have to be monthly, because that's the way that the state auditor's office is moving. This is not anything about trying to get somebody in trouble. This is about having a check and balance as eyes of the public. We are accountable to the public for every dollar that is spent, and they deserve to be able, us as representatives, to look at that stuff and be a check and balance, because you know what? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so what it looks like to us is you're trying to hide something. Now, that might not be the case, but that's certainly how it starts to come across. We need to get this settled. We need to get this settled. There's no agreement that we can make like that. I'm sorry, that's absolutely unrealistic.
So you're saying you're not willing to agree that you're not willing to agree to abstain from using this information as a political weapon?
What, Mr. Zook?
What does that even mean?
If we look at how the money's being spent and we have concerns and we bring those to the surface, that's not political. That's us being fiduciary stewards. So how can...
That's something that your fellow council members would need to evaluate if it was being used responsibly.
It totally is being used responsibly. That's our job. Our job is to oversee those funds and how they're being spent.
Would the council be willing to police itself and ensure that those kinds of political games are not played with this information?
I don't know what you're talking about, political games. This is financial documents.
Can I be frank there?
No, it's not. This is us. We've just sat here and talked. Where's the money going? How is it being spent? If we put, and we can get it, it just delayed. My only request is we'd like to see it in real time. And we're not seeing it in real time, and it's being filtered through places that make it much harder to get to. Every question that we're asking here today, we will be able to see at some point. It just takes, look at what I've got here. Look at what I've got here. Look at what I've got here. I have to go through stuff step by step and spend hours of my time to understand this. When I can click on it, and we could know exactly what we need to vote on tonight by looking at it online. But rather than seeing that, you say, by me asking for that information so that I can make real-time decisions, which every other business out there has, and I've walked through with Cassell, it's available today. They would come train us on how to do that. We're not asking for anything that we cannot see period. We can see all of this information today. So for you to say we're gonna turn it into a political weapon, we already have that tool if we were ever gonna use it. And sharing how public funds are being spent by the county, if that's a political tool and you're worried about that, I have concerns about how you're spending the money.
If the council is willing to make that commitment to me, to police each other and ensure that this information is not abused, then I will give staff direction right now to give you access to that information.
I believe we have access to that information by state law, and we don't need to ask for your permission.
And I agree with that.
I'm curious why
Who's
nobody's
gonna
willing to
decide
make
if
that commitment.
Why are you not willing to be
You guys-
open?
you guys
When you
will
made a
decide.
commitment to transparency, why are you not willing to be open and set now
am willing.
these parameters
Okay, well,
that
let's do it.
if you say something I don't like, then that means we're abusing it. And that's absolutely ridiculous.
Why would the council not agree to be professional with this information?
You have a right to the, why are you subverting,
commitment.
why are you subverting the public's access
All,
to
you have
this?
access to all of this information. You have access to all of it. This is just,
There doesn't need to be anything put on it. We have a right to it right now, as it is.
I'm just
You
curious
need to stop
why-
trying to control us.
I'm just curious why the council would.
I'm
not be
sorry,
willing
I'm
to
getting
make
really
that
upset at this BS that we always get from you. I have to walk away.
So what do we feel, Paul, what do you feel that we're not getting information?
We can't see, it takes forever to see how the money's getting spent, just like you're talking about today, Gordon. You're saying, how much money does the clerk have in his budget? Where is that being spent? Because traditionally, we've been able to outline a budget here and see it by line item. But according to the new county attorney, any of the money within a department's budget can be allocated to any expenditure account. So the clerk can say, hey, I know I only had $50,000 to outfit the business, the building. But I have a total budget of $450,000. So he can go to this account and pull money to finish paying it. And so right now we're getting something that says, hey, we need to give him $30,000 more, or whatever this request is. If we had access to that today, we could go through and say, click, how much is in that budget right now that he can adjust through, rather than using dated information that then gives him another $30,000 that he could allocate somewhere else.
So John, how do we solve this problem?
I'll comment on the law, and I've not wanted to give an opinion until I had it written up. And so I'm going to caveat, that's why attorneys and judges issue written opinions, because the process of writing the analysis often helps and sometimes changes your analysis. So with that caveat, the law is clear, as Mr. Dwarf and Ms. Worthen have said, and the executive has said tonight. All of that information the council is entitled to. The question, and it's a very narrow question, is, are they entitled to it? And the section that you quoted, Paul, uses the words statements, reports. The other section talks about information requests. The code uses legal language that has meaning. Statements have meaning. Reports, that has a meaning. Requests for information, that has a meaning. There's nowhere that I have found yet in the code that suggests that the law demands real-time access. That's not a statement by the attorney's office on whether that's a good thing or not. But I've not found anything in the code that I'm ready to conclude this evening that real-time access to the accounting software is required. The data that's in there, the council has every right to all of the data. It's a question of how is that data provided to the council, and does state statute mandate that that data be provided by giving individual council members access to the accounting software system. And it may be a good idea, and the executive could choose to give that to you. But I don't yet find in state code that that is mandated.
But it also
So-
does not say in any way that there must be agreements made before we get that data, right?
Yeah, I'm not commenting about that.
Okay.
Cameron, how
That's-
quick,
that's
how quick
wrong.
can we have this information? Can this information, as Paul say, be, if we requested it, could we have it in a day? Is there this big, long lag? That's the thing that you hear through the federal government all the time, is you can never get the information. You know, it's not that it can't be given, it's that you can't get it. Are we in the same boat here in the county when we need information on a specific subject? Now let's just use Bradford's request to get additional money so that he can complete the storage shed that he's got down there for his, I think his request is probably legitimate. Why can't we have that information even before this meeting when we knew that it may come up? Is that impossible to do?
No. I think Mr. Zook is expressing what his concerns are, and the council is expressing why they want that information, and it's hard to find that common ground. The information is there. There are times, and we've had examples of this already, where real-time access, you may stumble onto something that is miscoded, and so there's an expression to say, hey, you're requesting expense detail, I'd like to review that to make sure it's accurate, and then provide it to you. Real-time access doesn't allow that, but if you understand that there may be some things that need correcting, and everybody kind of cooperates and understands that, that's not necessarily a problem either, but I think that's where a lot of the concern lies right now.
So
that would be a pretty rare thing. According to our auditor, he said it would, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but he said that your department does a fantastic job at journal entries. He rarely sees a mistake out of your
I guess
office.
the way I'm looking at this, that we need to move on so that we don't continue to look at each other and have a real heavy feeling here like we got now. If we as council members gave you a list of things that we want to see at the next meeting so that we can make a decision, is it impossible for you to do that? And then if you say it's not impossible, then we can look at Executive Zook and say, why aren't we having that opportunity to do that? I don't want, it just reminds me of the federal government when you request something and it takes years to get that information, and all they're doing is stonewalling you.
Right.
It's a political thing.
You know what,
We have provided everything that's been requested, and we will provide anything that you request within 5 days. What's different is that what's being requested here is access into the accounting system to be able to look on your own, rather than requesting a report from us. And like I said, I would love to give that to you. I will give it to you right now. If I just have a commitment from the council that if you see your colleagues abusing the information, that you will police them. That's all I want, is that commitment.
I think we can only be fair that we're not gonna be mean to anybody. I have no intentions of being hard on Cameron or Executive Zook or, Attorney, I just don't have it. I just don't think we should have to stumble over these kind of things. We should just move ahead real fast, and if we find that our county clerk, Jess Bradford, has requested something that's not right, then we can have an opportunity to correct it. But if he's requesting something that's within reason, we shouldn't be holding it up.
That's right. I can make a decision tonight if I had it. And just so everybody here is aware, you look at this makeup of this council. We've got 2 business owners. You've got a guy that's seeped in finance for years. I happen to have been a regional financial officer for Fortune 100 insurance company. I know how those accounting systems work. Barbara and Carl were bankers. We're asking for read-only access, reports, and we're asking for reports so that we're not burdening you and asking you to take time away. I can pull up read-only. It's only read-only for us. We can't make any changes. We can't do anything to cast dispersions onto someone. We can only look in to see what happened in that system. And if me asking a question on a journal entry that appears a little quirky, well, it's rare. What are the chances I stumble on one of those things where you've made a mistake? And if I do, how is that a political weapon to say, hey, this appears to have been paid inappropriately? Why would you be worried about that? If everybody makes mistakes, you just say, yeah, it was paid inappropriately, it was entered wrong, Cameron keyed it wrong, whatever it was, you fix it. How's that a political weapon?
If you don't think there's any risk of this information being abused, then why won't the council make a commitment that they will ensure that that abuse doesn't happen?
I want to make two comments based on some statutory language. I think that one thing is, in a executive the term abuse is open to much interpretation, and I think that to ask folks to make a commitment to a term that could likewise be, that commitment could then be abused later.
I'm just asking the council to determine that. I'm not saying I would determine it, I'm saying they should determine it, and they should police themselves. I'm just asking them to police themselves. If they have a member who goes rogue and starts abusing the information, that they would bring them in. That's all I'm asking.
I'm not sure how information is abused if we obtain it and then we question it. Because if we make accusations and it's wrong, then that's upon the person who made the accusations that's wrong, who jumped to conclusions. Yeah. Right?
That is doing the people's business. It is the people's money. We are elected officials. I mean, to me, it is just so simple. So simple. And I just don't understand, if I'm just sitting there going, boy, let's be open. It is just so simple.
If one of your fellow council members was being abusive with this information, would you rein him in?
We're not going to answer that question. That's a leading
I think we would.
entrapment question.
I think
So
I'd
go
be
ahead.
more than,
Go ahead, John.
more than willing if we had a rogue council member that we'd bring him in. And the thing that we gotta all remember is we're elected officials, including, the attorney and the executive. You can't be fired. You can't, once you've been elected, the only one that can fire you is your bosses, and that's the people. We had a situation 10 years ago in the council where we had a problem and we didn't know how to solve it. Attorney Daines come in and he just flat told us, there's not a stinking thing you can do about this individual. Even though they're not performing, they're not doing their thing, you just got to work with them. And that's the way it is. Once you're elected, you cannot be fired. Look at in our national, we got some funny dudes there that are doing things illegal. They lie, they cheat, they do everything. There isn't a stinking thing you can do about it because they're representing the people. The only ones that can be, fire them is their constituents. I represent Providence and these different other areas. The only ones that can run me out is the people from Providence and College Ward and that. David Zook, he cannot be removed from his office no matter what we do. He's been voted by the people, and the only ones that can fire him is the people. And so I don't think we need to, we're all protected by the laws of the election. We can't get rid of anybody. We just got to learn to work together and be good about it.
I mean,
And I don't know if anything more needs to be said. We don't need to guarantee anybody anything.
Exactly.
I wanted to get to that other piece of code language. I think this is the overarching idea of the code. This is 17-53-212, which goes to the powers of the legislative body. County legislative body may examine the accounts of all officers having the care, management, collection, or disbursement of money belonging to the county. Now, at first blush, that sounds like examine. I mean, there's the spirit of the idea.
Yeah.
But the council ought to be able to examine the accounts. And access to Cassell would allow you to examine them. Legal analysis gets a little more muddy. Talks about, in that provision, the legislative body. Legislative body acts as a body. So do you log in together and look in council meeting? No. The very next section talks about individual members of the legislative body getting an answer within 5 days. So legal analysis requires us to look at that difference in language, which is why at this point my ultimate conclusion is, as far as the mechanics of that, it's requesting reports on as frequent a basis as you want to. They've got 5 days to get it back to you. But that's how the legislature has gone about to say, here's how you get, by law, that ability to examine the accounts. That being said, that's my legal answer. There's nothing, again, that would prohibit the executive from giving access to Cassell, and that certainly would be in the spirit of county legislative body may examine the accounts. And I think that in that sense, it's then also, I think personally, and I hate getting in between all of this, but I think that a request for a pledge not to abuse, again, I'm not sure what that means, but I would point back to the language that the auditor highlighted about just the tone of communication so that everybody feels like we can talk about things openly. I guess there's my legal opinion that I've frankly wanted to be able to put in writing. Haven't had time to put it all in writing, but it's not required to give you read-only access to it. So I think the spirit of the code would urge that may be a good idea, and that we all communicate in tones that prompt everybody to feel good about communicating.
Well, we're all individuals, and so for me to say that I can control Paul or what access to the information he's got becomes very, very hard. I can't control.
No.
It boils back to Gordon's point. It's the elected officials. I mean, it's the people.
I mean, what are you really worried about? People making false accusations against you in a public forum?
You do it all the time.
I have never made, oh my goodness.
I have it on video. It's on video.
Yeah, can I read the police report to everybody?
I don't think we need to go down this road.
I think we should. If you're talking about using
Gordon
political
mentioned that
grudges
he'd be willing-
against people.
Gordon mentioned that he'd be willing to police and keep an eye on things.
Alls I can do, and I'd be more than willing to do that, is I'll tell you when you're wrong, Dave.
I'll tell you when you're wrong.
That's right, I'll tell everybody.
I don't think I need to agree to anything that I have a right to have anyway.
Sure.
Exactly.
So I'm sorry, I don't, and I do not like the word abuse.
Yeah.
There are other counties where their commissioners or councils, they have full access all the time. They can sit there and watch every little transaction, whatever it happens.
I would note on that, there are probably commission forms where they are wearing both the executive hat and.
Okay. So,
But either way, they have access to that stuff as it happens, and I'm going, that is the people's business.
So-
They deal in the people's business. But to sit there and say, you know what, I'm not gonna let you see it except you request just certain things or whatever it may be, that is not being honest to the people. I will flat out tell that. That is just wrong.
Why are you afraid to take a stand against abusive behavior?
there is the only person on this whole thing that's been abusive to another elected official in public is you. You lied about me multiple times.
Why are you all afraid to take a stand against abusive behavior? That's all I'm saying. I'm just asking, if there's abusive behavior, will you police your colleague? That's all I'm asking.
There is no definition.
If you say yes, I'll give you access right now.
No, I'm not going to be held hostage for something that I am legally required to have, and the state allows me to have it not less than once each quarter or more often if requested by the governing body. I think we should take a vote here today to have access to a report every single day, because we can do it. And then the financial department has to print that report for us every day. Or we can just get access to it read-only through Cassell.
I'll give it to you right now.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll look forward to getting it.
I just want a commitment that you will stand up against it. Easy abuse, will you stand up against it?
That's why I'm looking at the report, at the financial information, to see if our accounting systems and the public's money is being spent abusively. And I will sure call that out if I find it.
Dirk, do you have a comment?
Madam Chair, thank you. Being fairly new to the county and having quite a bit of experience in forms of government that are similar to ours, you've heard the term good fences make good neighbors, and we rely on the county council, county executive form of government. And there's a call for transparency, and I believe strongly in that. And I just want to point out that our county executive has offered many times to ask the questions, and we will answer them. And we are willing completely to do that. In fact, in Councilmember Borup's request, he didn't ask for the report, yet we sat down quickly and tried to put together the report similar to what we thought he was asking for, and we provided it in our response, even though it wasn't asked for. And we offered to all council members, we made sure to distribute that to all council members and asked if you have any other questions. When I refer to the good fences make good neighbors, and we rely on our code, and I really do appreciate our county attorney Luthe's expertise and guidance on this throughout the whole situation. We do have separate branches of government. I believe it's an unfair measure of transparency and this is from other situations I've been in, and perhaps there's a past practice that has been created expectations. But to me, it's an unfair measure of transparency for a member of the legislative branch to walk into an executive branch office with or without a department director being there and asking for financial information on the spot. And we have had the situation where they've gone in, and you're used to that situation. And I'm just putting out to all of you in sincerity that just because I'm uncomfortable, for instance, on allowing that sort of direct, immediate access, that's not a lack of transparency. As part of the good fences make good neighbors and the separation of powers that I'm trying to discuss right here, we have humbly asked that the council and County Executive Zook has allowed me to be a spokesperson of sorts or a contact person or a liaison of sorts. And that's why the responses have come from me to the entire council for requests for information. And I just wanted to let you know that we expect to provide those answers. Simply put, in my humble opinion, I'm not sure the direct access is going to be used that much or that it's really going to be that helpful to you.
How helpful would it be tonight, Dirk?
I think it would have been, I really see a situation where the information that was shared in our budget committee meeting about those items and then shared with the council, I believe last night, that a question could have come in even directly to my office today and for a request for that sort of report, and I'm very positive we could have hit some buttons and printed it for you by tonight. We would have been happy to provide that. And so on the spot, I sincerely believe that many council members may not really know how to use that system in the end in a way that's actually helpful to you. My concern about day-to-day access, real-time access, is that things aren't really resolved in the accounting world day-to-day. And so, yeah, there will be journal entries in there that council members may not understand, might want to focus on or hyper-focus on, even make an issue out of it, where in the end, they really didn't have all the information and background on that certain thing. The other issue, yeah, sure.
Wouldn't that reflect on the council member if he sped forward with that, not knowing that information then?
Yeah.
So it becomes tainted for the council member, and that's why.
And I wouldn't.
We say we can't corral or control that abuse. That's
Right.
an individuality thing.
Right. And I would say, I hope I'm not going out too much out on a limb here, but I think that an erosion of trust has occurred between the branches, and in better times, and even right now, I wouldn't want that to happen to a council member. I would sincerely not want that to happen. I'd want you to have the best information.
Wouldn't that council member say, hey, Dirk, I see this, what's going on?
Yeah.
Answer that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'd like to see, Dirk, I think you're really making good sense here. I would think that if Councilmember Burrup went in and talked to, I don't know who you went and visited with, was it Cameron?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm concerned about this. I think that in a situation where we're transparent, then Dirk, or not Dirk, but Cameron would have taken his request, he would have put the information together, and then he would have given it to the council and to the executive and to whoever else the executive thinks that it should be done to. But that way, we would have known as council members, this request would have went in, we could have talked with Councilman Burrup about what you see and what you think, and I'm not sure if I'm in the loop. There's a lot of things I'm seeing I'm not in the loop on. There's a lot of discussion going on that I'm not in the loop on. And but I would have liked to know what the concern was, and you said you gave him a response?
Yeah, I mean, that was.
I would have loved to hear what the concern was, and I would have loved to hear, what the response was. And, the next meeting, we could discuss it as a body here, executive, the attorney, everyone else. That's transparency, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And we might be sending it to your council email, so I could add your other email that I know you see more often
And
to
so
those
that-
couple of questions.
That, Dirk, is a perfect example of what we're talking about here. Do you know how long it took me to identify that, bring it to the audit committee, raise the issue, and then after I did all of those things, it gave the chance for that journal entry to be reversed. And then I don't necessarily agree on how it was done after that, but it wasn't used as a political weapon, right? Nobody out there knows what it was. I didn't bring it outside anything, but it takes a long time to do that. And there are others that are out there. And so we're a part-time council.
Right.
And I have zero staff support.
Right.
And I have a system that Cassell, by the way, you say that we don't know how to use, Cassell would be more than happy to come train us on it individually or as a council and could get us up to speed very quickly. That, having access to that could save all of us oodles of time, number one. Number two, give us real-time information into voting. I mean, this budget, the budget committee sees this, but when was this updated today? 1-something p.m. Now, I have a full-time job. I looked at the original budget. I spent a lot of time this weekend going through the budget, writing notes to ask questions. And when did that report change? 1 p.m. today. I'm driving back from Salt Lake City. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to ask me to vote on some things that have changed and adjusted, and I'm going to be able to get a report from you when?
Well, I was giving the specific example of the clerk.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So that's still in there, but I still don't
Yeah.
have access to it. But I could, if we had Cassell, I could look up here, I could say, here's how much of the clerk's budget's been used year to date, here's what it's been used on, here's where some of that money can come up. And so is it an emergency we need to vote on today, or can we wait 2 weeks? Right, that's all of that information there. And to Nolan's point, if I see something that's a little squirrely, and I go running outside and just talk to the press about it and make a big deal, then I end up with egg on my face and I look like a moron. Or I can act like a grown-up adult and do the job and get the information I need rather than spending 15, 20 hours of my time when I could spend 15 minutes.
Real-time access in the middle of a public meeting seems troublesome to me as well. If one person can see it and the others don't really understand what they're talking about. But I'm just saying that since I've been here and since we've tried to ask council members to work with us and come to, and really without trying to be combative at all, I hope you get that spirit from me. Working with us and through, the council is the council. Every other elected official is their own person, so to say. I think you know what I'm talking about. But literally, the Department of Finance, every single one of those employees is a member of the executive branch. Right. And so we're just asking, and we've committed to give any information you'd like as soon as we can. Now, the one was about the legal, so we had some questions about that. And then the one was last week. I didn't know. I was out all last week. My mom passed away, and on Thursday we had the graveside service. And I actually was responding on Thursday and Friday to make sure that we got, because I wanted to make sure we had the response back within, given the holiday and all that, before the 5-day window. And so I just wanted to make it known that since I've been here, and I guess I've been here for a time where we've had some time where it was still, members are still going straight to maybe Cameron or someone else and asking questions. And that's something they're used to from the past. And then maybe there's a small amount of time where between the county executive and me getting some advice from me and saying, let's have some clear boundaries between the branches. Clear doesn't mean a lack of transparency, by the way. Clear will mean you get better information and more actual assistance. I'm not done if that's okay. Since that time, we have received 0 requests for financial information. 0. None. Even though I've been here at least for 2 months, County Executive Zook has offered that. So there's been a lot of talk about access to Cassell, a lot of talk and difficult times in meetings and whatnot, and difficult times outside of meetings. But ask us the questions and we really will. And I give you my commitment as far as we can to get it to you as quickly as possible. And if it's about financial information, we absolutely will fulfill the statutory requirements and get it to you within 5 days. There's no stonewalling. And I might add, is my humble opinion that just because we are trying to follow a process where we're trying to honor the separate branches of government, where the leader of the executive branch is County Executive Zook, and I'm his helper, just because we own those responses and will ultimately be responsible for them, doesn't mean that that's a lack of transparency. So I just want to give you my commitment that I know that County Executive Zook is dedicated to getting you guys whatever financial information you want, and the statutory system has set up a system for that. Ask us the questions and we'll provide it.
If we have a financial question or a question, that we are to go to you, and then you will research it out, and you will give it in 5 days, and you'll give it to the rest of the whole council in an email.
And quite frankly, what I thought was a pretty simple question, Paul's question, Councilmember Borup's question about additional licenses to Cassell, when I was writing and taking what Cameron shared with me and getting it ready for public consumption, it occurred to me that Cassell gave us a different quote on the number of one-time costs, and that a discount kicked in at 4 of those, but the discount for the ongoing per license fee didn't kick in until 6. But between Cameron and I, that wasn't really clear. So something that seemed to be a pretty simple response, if we didn't really carefully go through it, it could have been garbled. It could have been bad information that you would have gotten. So that's just a really overly kind of simple example about how something kind of super simple could be, it needs help. It needs, we want to make sure you get the best and most accurate information. And it's just that simple.
To your point, that email you sent me was incomplete and didn't get all the information. So I've talked to Cassell. They responded last Thursday, and the summary that you sent to us was actually incorrect.
I would have loved to have known that.
Well, that's why I'd like to see it real time rather than have it filtered through.
Well, just to another point, you found out some information that you felt my response was incorrect.
I'd already called Cassell before you responded to me.
And my point is, why didn't you let me know instead of sharing it for the first time in a public meeting?
Because I was just waiting. And when did
Right?
you send me the email, Dirk?
I was here all day until about 7:15
So you sent
last
it about
night.
7 last night,
Yeah.
and I was in Salt Lake all day today. When would I have a chance to talk
Yeah.
to you?
Same amount of time. I mean, I was.
Yeah.
When did you find out? You know.
Last Thursday.
So that's my point. You know.
Yeah.
So I am doing my best, though. That's my point.
Request.
I want you to know that I love you with all my heart and everything, but when I have a request, I am not going to come to you. I'm going to go to Executive Zook, and if he wants to share it with you, fine. But that's where my information is going to go. I have the world of confidence in Executive Zook that I've observed. I think he's very professional. I love his day-to-day weekly report.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
He's worked hard to tell you all that he's up to.
If the rest of the council wants to go to you, fine. But I'm going to go to Executive Zook, and I think he'll take care of me.
Yeah, he will. We're just working on really good business organizational processes. And I guarantee that when you go to Executive Zook, in a matter of minutes or hours, he'll say, hey, by the way, Dirk, Gordy came in and asked me this information just so you know. And with our department heads, we've said, you know, I'm the chief deputy. Yeah. But we want everyone to know what you asked so that that kind of information can be.
Information that I think is really important. That if Paul Burrick wants to know this, and it's something that would be good for the council to know, the council, I get an email, and if I send it to Big Z and not to the county, and it'd probably be responded to a lot faster.
So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to stand and let you all know that we are dedicated to total transparency. We're trying to have good business processes and provide you the very best, most accurate information. And we will always be dedicated to that. And I just kind of wanted to keep it that simple, so for all of your benefit.
So I'm not really
Thank
sure
you.
where we're going to go with the Just Bradford thing. He's made a request and whatnot, and it almost sounded to me like he's spent some budget money that maybe he shouldn't have spent. When are we gonna have the information that we need about his budget and his new building?
As a separate elected official, I know he told me today he felt really bad that he wouldn't be able to be here, but he encouraged me to invite all of you to feel free to email him and ask him any question you've got about it. He'll be able to get you that. And we can help him if he needs our help. We'd be happy to help with
I
that.
think from what I can tell, the council's concerned that he had a budget, and he shared with the council that he had enough budget to cover the renovation of this new facility, and I'm questioning if he did, because he didn't know that he was going to get this new building to renovate when he made his budget, so somewhere along the line, we gotta all come to an agreement as to where we're at with it and take care of it.
My 2 cents on that is that we all actually believed this was coming before the council previously, and somehow those two didn't come with the other ARPA item. And other than that, I think there might be some crossing issues. So we need to find out, and we can help Jess. We can let him know, and we can get you that clarity.
Let's get the information to us all. We'd love to hear it. We'll do our best.
As will we.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Well,
Thank
after
you.
that discussion, this is a initial proposal, so we don't have to take much action on it. But I would like to take one piece of action on this budget amendment. And I'd like to waive the rules and make a motion that we strike item 2, funding for potential acquisition of capital assets at $4.5 million that would be moved into the miscellaneous and general fund. Strike that off of this budget request today.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we amend the rules and approve Resolution 2022
No, we're just making a motion to strike number 2.
Okay, making a motion to strike number 2
From resolution 2022-17.
from Resolution 2022-17.
Where was that from?
May I speak to that?
Okay,
It'll be brief, because it's a question
let's have
of
it
you.
brief.
Okay, I'll do better than I did in my presentation. There is a project that the council and executive can at least agree on as an important task that this would be in reference to, and I'm trying to be somewhat veiled because we don't want to openly advertise broadly a maximum purchase price. But if that is still a goal for any time this year, if understanding, if you move forward tonight on all the other elements, if you agree to it, I would say that it would behoove this entity legally to have a budgeted item, even if the real estate market seems a little cooler, in order to have real property acquisition.
May I ask a question about that then to the county attorney?
I was veiled enough that I'm not sure what we're talking
Well, he's just saying, if we approve this, there's going to be $4.5 million sitting in the miscellaneous and general budget. We don't have to use that money, or whichever department that controls that budget does not have to use that $4.5 million for real estate acquisition. They can use that money for any purpose they see fit to.
legally, I believe that.
Okay. No, thank you.
I can't leave 4.5 million just out there dangling for just.
Would it be something tolerable if it were placed in something that you felt you confined a little bit better?
We
for
thought
that?
we had that, but we don't have that.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, sir.
If you gotta do something like that, there is no reason we can't file a
Special session and vote for it.
special session.
Right.
Okay.
Session, boy, yeah.
Okay.
We can do that.
We got it all lined up, agreements ready and everything. Hey, we're in there.
I just wouldn't want to see a repeat of,
Last fall. Yes, I'm still pretty bitter about that.
understood. I just want to be able to move
Yeah, we're-
swiftly on the behalf of the county.
Fast and given an agreement.
Okay.
So, you want to vote on it?
Madam Chair, I think Attorney Luthi or someone had a question? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, so is the motion still standing then?
Yes.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And is this meaning that we should have a special session then, executive session? Okay,
I think this one,
okay.
There was one item on here that was to be spent by June 30th.
you want to move to approve that? That was the
That was the
number 3.
3. Let me go back to that. Where's that? I don't have it right here, but
$34,000 grant.
the 34,000. Well, I move that we approve that, item number 3 of the $34,000 for the.
Is that for the training?
It was the grant funding for the V2 system for 3 interview rooms that was to be spent by June 30th.
Thank you for remembering that.
And I move that we approve that portion of the budget so that that money could be spent by June 30th.
Second.
All right, how do I word that now,
So say
guys?
it's been moved and seconded.
It's been
that we
moved
waive the
and
rules.
seconded that we may waive the rules
Approve item number 3.
and provide the 34,000. Okay?
Under item number 3.
On item number 3. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, anything else I need to be aware of?
The rest of it will automatically come up at the next meeting.
Okay.
Be great to have some information.
Madam Chair, before you move on from that item, I just would like to say that I had hoped to get a commitment from the council in relation to my request, seeing that the council's not willing to do that, and how important it is for the council to have the real-time access. I'm willing to grant that to the council, and I just would hope that you would police each other if you see anyone being abusive with that information. But I'm going to trust you that you will do that. I'm going to give direction to Cameron that he provide you with that real-time access to the accounting information.
Thank you, Executive. So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
every one of us have taken the oath of office. And so, and in that oath of office, we will execute our responsibilities with fidelity. And so, to even be asked that really bothers me. And so, because it is part of my election, when I was elected, and I took that oath of office, it's automatically in there, and that's it. And so, I just still am appalled by that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Erickson. Right, any other comments?
Had way too many comments tonight.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to 11D. Resolution 2022-20, a resolution approving the appointment of representatives to the boards of trustees for the Cornish and Newton Cemetery districts.
Madam Chair, I move that we waive the rules and approve Resolution 2022-20 for the Board of Trustees for Cornish and Newton Cemetery District.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve, but we're waiving the rules, and approving Resolution 2022-20, approving the representatives to the boards of trustees for the Cornish and Newton Cemetery districts. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Last item on initial proposals is a discussion of salaries, and Councilman Borup wanted to bring this up and have a discussion on this.
So one of the things, and Craig McAllister's here.
Can I say something?
sure.
I had Deveron Anderson call me last night and apologize for not being able to be here, but he's at a convention. And so he would have been here to want to come in on this and just express his opinion. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
And our finance director is at a conference as well. Or sorry, Amy, our HR director also.
Okay,
That's why she isn't here.
okay, thank
She saw
you.
it on and she was worried.
So it specifically came up for me for Craig. He's the best treasurer in the state of Utah. And we need to make sure that he's taken care of. I've said a lot tonight already, so I might as well go all in. I'm in for penny, I'm in for Pam. I don't feel the same way about several of our elected officials that I feel about you. But personal feelings aside, we should get the salaries right for them, as much as it pains me to do so. And I think we should get that on there, get it done, and move on, but I want to make sure Craig's taken care of.
So what are you proposing?
Yeah.
Well, we have Amy come in with a, we don't have any resolutions here or anything, but I think we have Amy come in and give us the salaries. It's probably time to look at the elected official salaries and get those voted on, taken care of, maybe adjusted, a little bit of a mid-year adjustment.
And are you saying that we go with the original proposal of the salary increase that was proposed way back at the beginning?
I think so, given where the year went, and we just do it across the board. But I'd like to juice the treasurer a little bit more. So.
Well, I'd be more than happy to encourage us that we have Amy come in and make a presentation of where we originally did it. I honestly feel that executive and our clerk and those other individuals that got passed over, I think we made a mistake when we did that. I think they, as far as their abilities and what they've done, of course, there's been some bumps along the way, but I think we have got, if we'll just let them do their job, I think we got a good group, and there's learning that's take place. There's learning on my part as a council member, but I think that I would suggest, Madam Chair, that we let Amy come in on our next meeting and present. And I would support what Paul has been saying.
And then maybe have a resolution drawn up and make sure we get the right public notice given and everything, John, so we can take action.
think also Amy could address what we were talking about in the budget meeting on that other issue.
900?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So I agree with Paul, there's many in the county, and I want to say thanks to all the county employees, and want to be fair with them all in that area as well, so.
Okay.
Can I ask just for the noticing requirements, if I remember right, which Janine and I'll have to look, if you wanted to act on it next meeting.
We're not going to have enough time.
No, they just.
One week?
I think it's just 1 week.
But we can discuss it, can't we?
Well, you can discuss it all you want.
So if she comes in and discuss it, then we'd still have time before we act on it, right?
There'll have to be notice that you intend to make increases in elected official salaries, preferably identifying which ones, but I think even just generally would be sufficient, and then a public hearing held on that before you'd be able to act on it. You can discuss it all you want.
Could we?
We need to just check on what that length of.
Because I don't think we were going to act on it once she talked about it, but were we or what?
I mean, I would love it if we could, but if we have to wait, however we could do that.
Let's do it as fast as possible.
Do we need a resolution for that, John?
We can prepare one.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, other business. Lewiston 4th of July Parade, Monday, July 4th at 9:15 a.m. Does anyone want to attend that?
How are we gonna do that? Because we won't be able to
I
go to
know.
Lewiston and then make it down to Hiram.
Right, we might have to divide and conquer. My problem is I can't go to either one, so I don't know what anybody wants to do.
I'll be at the Lewiston parade.
And I'll be at the Hiram.
Okay.
I'll be to hire him with Gordon, but we walking, riding, what are we doing? What has
Well,
been?
now I don't have to compete with the racehorse. I might be able to get plenty of caddy.
Tell you what, I'll go up and fill John White's role up in Lewiston with Dave, and we'll be done before we get to the
We'll give
grandstands
away all our
in
candy that was
Middletown.
going to go to hire him.
We can jump in my general if you'd like.
That'd be good.
All right, so far, 2 at each parade, correct? Okay. Okay, thank you. Joint meeting with the Planning Commission Thursday, July 7th at 3:30.
Can I ask Tim, do you have an agenda of what
Yeah,
we're talking about on
Tim.
that?
Good evening. We could have an agenda. Our understanding was that the council commission would like to meet quarterly. I had a tentative understanding that there might be specific issues you'd like to discuss together or raise, but,
That's water.
okay,
That'd be good.
Yeah.
certainly.
Any other suggestions for Tim?
Oh, I hate it.
What?
Okay.
Okay, so what did you say, David? I'm sorry.
CUP.
Conditional use permits.
Okay,
And water.
and water.
And
Okay.
water becomes a entangled web. Whether we invite the state water rights guy to come in and help on that, or what our limits are. John, can you, what do you say there?
I think we already know it.
I'll say that again.
We discuss water rights, and we've talked about this before. You and I have had that discussion about what the planning and zoning can do and cannot do. Those would be issues I'd like to have some, some areas of discussion on the water and everything else. I think it's going to become a strong issue the more and more we go into what we're facing in the West as a drought, and how we as a county can look at that. Do you see what I mean?
That's an area where I don't have a lot of expertise, but could do research.
Okay, that would help us, so that if we knew our limitations,
Yeah.
or what we can and absolutely cannot do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Would Nathan Doggs have any information? Dowds, yeah.
He's on the planning commission.
Yeah, and I know he happens to be out of town for this meeting,
Oh, and he has,
unfortunately.
okay.
Will Atkins might be able to be there or something, from the state water
Right.
engineers.
Yeah, well, I can count.
Will would be great.
One thing to remember,
He's
is the
around.
county will have no control over
No,
rainwater.
but the attorney county has told us on the P and Z we can do some things, and that's why, and so maybe we're inviting to oil and water there if we wait and see what the county can say before we have Will there. I don't know, those are all things I'm trying to figure out, because, I just think it's an issue coming at us.
Well, and I think the basic answer that I do know enough to give is going to be that as you make zoning decisions, you certainly can take into account water.
See, and I think that needs to be more put out there.
But that does not mean that, say, in this zone,
right,
we require this kind of, but as you decide whether to rezone in this area to allow more density, you can look into what's.
Because to me, that comes along the general plan that we're talking about too. So maybe as a county, we discuss that before we get Will here. I don't know. Whether the council member
Okay.
can put on that.
We could also look at the applicable policies, draft policies in the plan, if it relates the discussion. Okay?
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Tim. All right, Hyde Park Hometown Days Parade on Saturday, July 16th. Apparently, we don't know a time on that.
I'm not sure, I haven't been able to register because I can't find where to register.
Okay. Joint meeting with Logan City, Thursday, July 21st at 5:30, and we're inviting Sheriff Jensen to be with that, right?
Yes.
And so far, can everyone be there? Is that?
I think all the mayors should be invited to that too, I think.
Okay. Are you saying we should do
No, I
that?
think they are being.
They're all, okay, awesome. Okay, the Logan City Pioneer Day Parade, Saturday, July 23rd. I can go to that one.
Will not be there.
Okay.
Can't be there.
North Logan Pioneer Day Parade, that's at 10 a.m. on July 25th. That's a Monday. I won't be able to go to that.
I don't know if be there, I'm working.
Yeah.
All right, council member reports. Councilman Erickson.
None.
Okay. Gordon.
After we set the party date,
Oh, yeah.
remember we changed it, we moved it up to the first week, and I said, oh, that's a wonderful time.
Yeah.
I go home and share it with the calendar people, and they told me that I was being the last official that whole week.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to set a different one, and Carl, I think the one that we originally was gonna do was wasn't it the 19th of August, and he was gonna be gone that whole third week? And so,
Or was he gone the 19th or the 12th? I think he might have been gone the 12th, right? Or the 20, he was either gone the
Well, I
12th or
think-
the 26th.
I think what we went to the middle, the third week is because that was a week that we didn't have council meeting. We'll have a council meeting on the 8th and a council meeting on the 22nd. And so we opted that week. Now, I think from what I remember, his discussion was, is he would sure like to come, but he wasn't gonna be around at all on that,
No.
that middle week.
He's going to
And
Europe.
so what I'm suggesting, that we pick, either a Thursday, I'd say, how about Thursday or Friday, the 11th or the 12th? Has anyone got a problem with that, or?
In August?
In August, or?
I'm not around myself, so.
Okay, you're not gonna be around, how about the 25th or the 26th of August?
That would be good.
Either one of those work for me.
All right, why don't, when I get home tonight, I'll clear it with the calendar and make sure that I'm available. And then why don't I text everybody those 2 dates of August, and everybody can reply.
Okay,
Okay.
Is that okay?
perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
And I want everybody to be a best of friends by then, so we got a lot to work on, so that when we come and eat shrimp, we can all smile.
Well, I'll bring my wife, so then I'll be on my best behavior.
We'd love to have your wife.
All right. Thank you, Gordy.
Okay.
Nolan.
Janine, for those of us doing the parade, do we come Friday and get signs, or are we walking? If we're walking, we don't need
Yeah.
signs, do we? Or
Well, what we do is we gotta have a support vehicle, I don't know.
If there's only like
They
two,
come-
you'll just.
How many bags of Tootsie Rolls can you carry?
We want more than, we want
Well, I
more
was
than. We
not
got a
giving
lot,
away as fast
we
as
got a
John
lot
White
more
was.
people in Hiram than you got up there in Lewiston, so we're gonna need double the amount that you guys get. And then we're gonna invite Executive Zook. He can either walk with us or he can find somebody to drive with us.
Well, I can bring my side-by-side and we can put them on that and then we're just pulling the stuff out of there or whatever you wanna do, so.
Yeah, we could do that, I don't know what your plan is, if you got a preference,
I can drive for you guys.
you'll drive for us?
Yeah.
So if you're driving, you can get the signs and the candy or whatever else.
Yeah, I can take care of all of that.
So we meet the same place as we did last year?
That would be perfect.
And it'd be fine to bring your wife, you know, she's got a pretty good arm.
Thank you.
All right.
Hiram.
Oh, that's not her, okay, yeah.
So then these two have
These
to
two
figure,
will
get their
work
stuff.
out, arrange.
What Lewiston?
All right, Paul.
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me?
So we're good.
Okay.
Carol just walked in, do we wanna?
We'll just say thank you, Tara. We took care of your thing, so there you go. She's good.
You're not listening to us.
Yeah, all right.
Tara, will you just wave? Are they okay? She said it's all taken care of.
Okay, good.